The emergency klaxon cut through the recycled air of Aurealis Station like a plasma blade through hull plating. Daniel Cross jolted awake in his cramped maintenance quarters, the taste of stale coffee still lingering from his last shift. 3 years into a 5-year contract at this godforsaken border outpost, and he'd learned to distinguish between the various alarm patterns. This one meant structural failure in the lower sectors. He rolled out of his bunk, feet hitting the cold metal floor as the station's automated voice droned through the speakers. All available maintenance personnel report to Section Delta 9. Radiation leak detected. Hazard suits mandatory. Daniel grabbed his orange hazmat gear from the wall locker, checking the seals with practiced efficiency. The suit's heads-up display flickered to life, showing his vitals and radiation levels. All green for now. He sealed the helmet and headed for the maintenance lift, his magnetic boots clanking against the grated walkway. The lift descended through the station's industrial bowels, past levels of humming machinery and tangles of conduits that kept 30,000 souls alive in the vacuum. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he caught glimpses of the Veil Nebula stretching across the void, its purple and gold tendrils seeming to reach toward the station like cosmic fingers, beautiful and deadly, just like everything else out here on the frontier. Section Delta 9 had been off-limits for 2 months now, ever since the Elthar Empire's failed raid. The alien research facility down there had taken a direct hit from human defensive fire when the Elthar tried to establish a foothold. Command had written it off as a total loss, scheduling demolition for next month. But apparently, something down there couldn't wait that long. The lift doors hissed open to reveal a scene from a nightmare. The corridor walls were buckled and scorched, emergency lighting casting everything in hellish red. Debris floated in the artificial gravity field's dead zones, where the generators had failed. Daniel's radiation meter began clicking faster. "Cross, that you?" The voice crackled through his helmet comm. Sarah Martinez, the shift supervisor, sounded exhausted. "Copy that, Martinez. What's the situation?" "Power core in the alien lab is going critical. We've got maybe 40 minutes before it breaches containment. Need you to get in there and initiate emergency shutdown." Daniel's stomach dropped. "The Elthar lab, that whole section's been sealed since the attack." "Yeah, well, now it's unsealed and about to turn the station into a new star. You're the only one qualified who's not dealing with the cascade failure in Section Charlie." He moved deeper into the ruined sector, following his suit's navigation overlay. The radiation levels climbed steadily. His boots crunched over crystallized coolant and fragments of alien technology. The Elthar had been studying something here, something important enough to risk open conflict with humanity. Now it was all just expensive debris waiting to kill everyone on the station. The lab entrance had been blown inward, the heavy blast doors twisted like aluminum foil. Daniel squeezed through the gap, his suit's external lights piercing the darkness beyond. The main laboratory stretched before him, a cathedral of broken glass and sparking equipment. Alien script still glowed faintly on some of the intact panels, their meaning lost on him. At the center of the chaos, the power core pulsed with unstable energy, its containment field flickering like a dying heartbeat. Daniel moved toward the manual override panel, his fingers already running through the shutdown sequence in his mind. 37 steps, each one critical. One mistake and the core would detonate immediately instead of in 40 minutes. A sound made him freeze. Not mechanical. Not the groan of stressed metal or the hiss of escaping gas. It was organic, breathing. Daniel turned slowly, his lights sweeping across the destroyed lab. There, in what had been an isolation chamber, 2 small forms huddled together. His breath caught in his throat. Aliens. Young ones, by the look of them. No bigger than human children. Maybe 7 or 8 years old in human terms. Their skin had the characteristic blue-gray shimmer of the Elthar, and their 4 arms were wrapped around each other protectively. But what struck him most were their eyes, large and multifaceted like cut gemstones, reflecting his lights in 1,000 tiny points. They were wearing what looked like environmental suits, but torn and damaged. One of them had a deep gash across her shoulder, the wound sealed with some kind of emergency medical foam. They were trapped behind a fallen support beam, the isolation chamber's exit completely blocked. Daniel's hand moved instinctively to his comm unit, ready to report the discovery. The standing orders were clear. Any Elthar found on human territory were to be detained for interrogation, or eliminated if detention wasn't possible. These were the enemy, the same species that had killed thousands of humans in border skirmishes over the past decade. But they were also children, hurt, terrified children who would die in approximately 36 minutes if he did nothing. The smaller one made a sound, a kind of musical trill that their species used for communication. Even through the universal translator's attempts, it came through as pure fear. The larger one pulled her companion closer, baring small teeth at Daniel in what was clearly a protective gesture. Though she could barely stand, Daniel looked at the power core, then back at the trapped aliens. The math was simple and cruel. He had time to do one thing: shut down the core or free the children. Not both. If he saved them, he'd have to carry them out. And 2 injured alien children would slow him down. They'd probably all die in the explosion. If he shut down the core first, they'd definitely die, buried under tons of debris when the emergency containment protocols sealed this entire section. His supervisor's voice crackled through the comm. "Cross, what's your status clocks ticking?" "Beginning shutdown sequence now," he heard himself say, even as his body moved toward the trapped children instead. The beam pinning them must have weighed 2 tons. Daniel grabbed an intact gravity manipulator from a nearby workstation, praying it still had power. The device hummed to life, and he directed its field at the beam. Physics was physics, whether human or alien. The beam lifted slowly, centimeter by agonizing centimeter. The children watched him with those prismatic eyes, not moving, barely breathing. The larger one's grip on the smaller never loosened. When the gap was wide enough, Daniel reached in and pulled them out, one at a time. They weighed almost nothing in the station's partial gravity. The moment they were free, the larger one tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Daniel saw the problem. Her leg was broken, bone visible through the torn suit. Without thinking, he scooped both children into his arms. They made those trilling sounds again, but didn't resist. "Martinez, I've got a problem," he said into the comm, already moving toward the exit. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that's going to get me court-martialed. Clear a path to Medical Bay 3. "Daniel, what the hell are you—" He cut the connection and ran. The children clung to him as he navigated the destroyed corridor, their small bodies trembling. Behind them, the power core's pulse grew more erratic. His suit's computer calculated their chances of survival, dropping by the second. 28 minutes to breach. The lift was 17 minutes away at full speed. Medical Bay 3 was another 10 minutes from there. 1-minute margin of error. If everything went perfectly. Nothing ever went perfectly. The first obstacle came at the intersection of Delta 9 and Delta 8. The emergency containment system had already begun its lockdown sequence. Heavy blast doors grinding closed. Daniel shifted the children to one arm, ignoring their startled trills, and used his maintenance override on the door panel. The codes were accepted, but the door only opened halfway before jamming. He squeezed through sideways. The children pressed against his chest. The smaller one had gone very quiet, and he could feel her burning with fever, even through both their suits. Whatever injuries she had, they were getting worse. The second obstacle was human. 3 security officers stood at the next checkpoint, weapons drawn. Daniel recognized the lead officer, Marcus Thompson, a decent guy who played poker with the maintenance crew on Thursdays. "Cross, what the hell are you carrying?" Thompson's voice was steady, but his rifle didn't waver. Kids. Thompson, they're just kids. They're Elthar. You know the protocols. The protocols can go to hell. That whole section's about to blow. You want to explain to command how we let 2 children die because of bureaucracy. Thompson's rifle lowered slightly. Command's going to have your head for this. They can get in line. Right now, these kids need medical attention. And we've all got about 25 minutes before this conversation becomes academic. One of the other officers, younger and more nervous, kept his weapon raised. We can't just let enemy combatants... Enemy combatants, Daniel's voice turned hard. Look at them, Morrison. Really look. That one's maybe 6 years old. She's dying. You want to shoot a dying 6-year-old? The smaller alien chose that moment to open her eyes. Those prismatic orbs focusing on Morrison's face. She made a soft sound, almost like a human child's whimper. Morrison's hands shook. Thompson made the decision. Medical Bay 3 is prepped for human physiology only. Take them to Bay 7. Dr. Yates has xenobiology training. He stepped aside, then added quietly, I'm reporting this. Daniel. I have to. I know. Daniel was already moving past them. Thanks, Marcus. The lift ride felt like an eternity. The children huddled against him, and he found himself talking to them, not knowing if they understood, but needing to fill the silence. It's going to be okay. We're going to get you help. Just hold on a little longer. The larger one looked up at him, and for a moment, her translator managed to process something. The voice that came through was thin and distorted, but the word was clear. Why? Why was he doing this? Why risk everything for the enemy's children? Daniel thought of his sister back on Earth, her twin daughters who sent him video messages every month. He thought of every choice that had led him to this moment. Standing in a lift with 2 dying alien children while a nuclear core counted down to detonation behind them. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Medical Bay 7 was in chaos when they arrived. Dr. Yates, a tall woman with prematurely gray hair, took one look at what Daniel was carrying and immediately began barking orders. Clear Trauma Room 2. Get me xenomorph stabilizers and find me every drop of synthetic hemoglobin we have. She turned to Daniel as medical staff swarmed around them. How long were they exposed? At least 3 hours. Probably more. The little one's been unconscious for the last 10 minutes. They transferred the children to medical beds, and Daniel got his first clear look at them without the red emergency lighting. They were even younger than he'd thought. The larger one had intricate markings on her skin that seemed natural rather than decorative, swirling patterns that caught the light. The smaller one's breathing was so shallow he could barely see it. That's when he noticed the symbols on their torn clothing. Even without understanding Elthar heraldry, he recognized royal markings when he saw them. These weren't just any children. Dr. Yates, he started, but she was already working on the smaller one, her hands moving with practiced precision. Whatever you're about to tell me, it can wait. These children are going into shock. An explosion rumbled through the station, distant but powerful enough to make the lights flicker. Daniel's comm unit lit up with emergency alerts. The power core had breached, but the containment had held. Mostly. Sections Delta 7 through Delta 12 were now permanently sealed. Martinez's voice cut through the chatter. Cross, report to command immediately. Daniel looked at the 2 small forms on the medical beds, surrounded by doctors and nurses working frantically to save them. The larger one was conscious, her multifaceted eyes fixed on him with an expression he couldn't read. On my way, he said, knowing full well what waited for him. Court-martial at best, execution for treason at worst. He'd saved 2 enemy children, possibly royal ones, and in doing so had violated every protocol in the book. As he turned to leave, a small hand caught his. The larger child had reached out, her grip surprisingly strong. She said something in her own language. The translator struggling with it before producing, "Name." "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Cross." She pointed to herself with one of her other hands. "Cirrus." Then, to the smaller one, "Nira, sister." Daniel squeezed her hand gently before pulling away. "They'll take care of you, Cirrus. Both of you." Walking to command. Daniel thought about the choice he'd made. In 30 seconds, he'd decided that 2 alien children were worth more than his career, possibly more than his life. The rational part of his brain screamed that he was an idiot. The human part, the part that had seen scared children instead of enemies, felt nothing but certainty. Commander Harrison's office was exactly what Daniel expected of a career military woman running a border station. Spartan, efficient, with only a single personal touch, a photograph of Earth taken from orbit. Harrison herself sat behind her desk like a judge at trial, her steel gray eyes giving away nothing. "Explain yourself, Cross." Daniel stood at attention. "I rescued 2 children from the destroyed Elthar laboratory section before the power core breached. Sir." "Enemy children?" "Children, sir. Who would have died if I hadn't acted?" Harrison leaned back in her chair. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "We're in the middle of an undeclared war with the Elthar Empire. You've just handed them a propaganda victory. Humans kidnap Elthar young. The headlines write themselves. With respect, Commander, they'll say that whether the children are alive or dead, at least this way, we can prove we tried to save them." "We," Harrison's voice turned sharp. "There is no we here. Cross, you acted alone, against standing orders." A comm signal interrupted them. Harrison's aide appeared on the screen, looking nervous. "Commander, priority message from Fleet Command. Admiral Chen wants an immediate report on the situation." Harrison's jaw tightened. "How does Fleet already know?" "Unknown, ma'am, but the Admiral seems agitated." After the aide signed off, Harrison fixed Daniel with a stare that could have melted hull plating. "Those children aren't just any Elthar, are they?" "I noticed royal markings on their clothing, sir." Harrison pulled up a holographic display, alien script flowing across it. "Initial biological scans confirm it. They're carrying genetic markers of the Elthar royal line. Congratulations, Cross. You've just saved the daughters of Queen Zaratai herself." Daniel's legs nearly gave out. The Queen's daughters. He'd saved the heir apparent to the Empire that had been humanity's greatest threat for a generation. "The question now," Harrison continued, "is whether you've prevented a war or started one." Before Daniel could respond, alarms began blaring again. This time, it was the proximity alert. Harrison's display shifted to show external sensors. 3 Elthar warships had just dropped out of hyperspace, weapons hot and shields raised. "Sir, they're hailing us." The communications officer's voice crackled through the comm. On screen, the face that appeared was distinctly alien, yet undeniably military. The Elthar commander's 4 eyes fixed on Harrison with an intensity that transcended species. "Human commander," the translator rendered his words in flat, emotionless English. "You have one of our research pod's emergency beacons broadcasting from your station. You will explain immediately." Harrison stood slowly. "Commander Thax, we've had a containment breach in our damaged sectors. During emergency operations, we discovered survivors from your facility." Survivors. The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise or suspicion. "Our scans detected no life signs when we retrieved our personnel 2 months ago. They were in an isolated section, shielded from scans. 2 young ones. They're currently receiving medical treatment." The change in the Elthar commander was immediate. His 4 eyes widened, and he leaned forward. "Young ones, describe them." Harrison gestured to Daniel. "This is the maintenance engineer who found them. Cross." Daniel stepped forward, acutely aware he was probably about to become either a hero or humanity's most wanted. 2 female children, approximately 6 and 8 years in human terms. The older one identified herself as Cirrus, the younger as Nira. They have royal markings. The silence that followed was deafening. Commander Thax's image flickered as he turned to someone off-screen. Rapid clicks and trills of untranslated Elthar filling the channel. When he turned back, his expression was unreadable. Those children have been missing for 2 months. The Queen believes them dead. You will transfer them immediately. They're in critical condition, Harrison said carefully. Moving them now could kill them. Then we will board your station with medical teams. Absolutely not. Harrison's voice turned to steel. No Elthar military presence on this station? The weapons on all 3 warships began charging. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. He'd saved 2 children only to trigger the very war everyone had been trying to avoid. Commander, Daniel said suddenly, an idea forming. What if I go with them as a liaison to ensure their continued care and safe transfer when they're stable? Both commanders turned to look at him. Harrison's expression suggested she thought he'd lost his mind. Thax's was calculating. You would put yourself in our custody, the Elthar commander asked. If it ensures those children get the care they need and prevents any misunderstandings. Yes. Another long silence. Then Thax spoke. Your Admiral Chen is already in communication with our fleet command. But know this, human. If those children die, if this is some elaborate deception, your entire station will be held responsible. The transmission ended, leaving Daniel and Harrison alone. You realize what you've just volunteered for? Harrison asked. If those children die, the Elthar will execute you. If they live, you'll likely be interrogated about everything you know about this station's defenses. Either way, you're probably not coming back. Daniel thought of Cirrus's hand in his, the trust in her alien eyes when she'd told him her name. They're children, Commander. Someone has to keep them safe. Harrison studied him for a long moment. You're either the bravest or stupidest man on this station. Cross. Probably both, sir. A ghost of a smile crossed Harrison's face. Get back to Medical Bay 7. Stay with those children. I'll handle the politics. And Cross. Whatever happens next, you did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Daniel saluted and left, his mind racing. In the span of a few hours, he'd gone from a simple maintenance engineer counting down the days of his contract to possibly the most important human in the current crisis. And all because he couldn't let 2 children die. Medical Bay 7 had transformed into a fortress. Security guards stood at every entrance, and Daniel counted at least 3 intelligence officers trying to look inconspicuous. Dr. Yates met him at the door, her expression grim but hopeful. The older one, Cirrus, is stable. Broken leg, radiation exposure. But she'll make it. The younger one, she paused. Nira has extensive internal injuries. We're doing everything we can. But Elthar physiology is different enough that some of our treatments might be doing more harm than good. Can I see them? Yates nodded and led him to the trauma room. Cirrus was awake, her large eyes tracking everything with sharp intelligence. When she saw Daniel, she made that trilling sound again. But this time, the translator caught it. You came back. I said they'd take care of you, Daniel replied, moving to stand beside her bed. How are you feeling? Hurts, but less hurt than before. Her syntax was awkward through the translator, but the meaning was clear. She looked at her sister in the next bed, surrounded by medical equipment. Nira won't wake up. The doctors are helping her. She just needs time. Cyrus studied him with those multifaceted eyes. You're not like the others. The other humans. They look at us with fear or hate. You look at us like... Like what? Like your younglings, with protection feeling. Before Daniel could respond, one of the intelligence officers approached. Mr. Cross, I need to brief you on communication protocols with the Elthar. There are certain topics. Not now. Daniel cut him off, not taking his eyes off the children. Whatever you need can wait. This is a matter of station security. And these are injured children. Priority goes to them. The officer looked like he wanted to argue, but Dr. Yates backed Daniel up. My patient needs calm right now. You can do your briefing later. As the officer retreated, Cirrus made a sound that might have been a laugh. You have authority challenge with your own people for us. Apparently so. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, Why did you save us? We are enemy. Daniel pulled up a chair and sat down, choosing his words carefully. Do you know what enemy means? Those who wish harm to your people. Do you wish harm to my people? No. I wish to go home. I wish Nira to wake up. I wish... She paused, struggling with words. I wish the hurting to stop. All the hurting. Then you're not my enemy. Over the next several hours, Daniel stayed with the children. He helped the medical staff adjust equipment, translated Cirrus's needs when the automatic translator failed, and simply provided a familiar presence in a sea of strangers. Cirrus told him fragments of their story, how they'd been visiting their mother's research facility when the attack came, how their guards had hidden them in the isolation chamber before the station's defensive fire had torn through the section. 2 months, she said quietly. 2 months in the dark. The emergency supplies ran out after 3 weeks. Nira got sick. I thought we would die there. But you didn't. You survived. Because of you. The conversation was interrupted by another proximity alarm. Daniel checked the nearest display, and his blood ran cold. It wasn't just 3 Elthar ships anymore. An entire fleet had arrived, including what looked like a royal command carrier. Harrison's voice came over the station-wide comm. All personnel, remain calm. We are in diplomatic communication with the Elthar fleet. This is not, repeat, not a combat situation. But Daniel could hear the tension in her voice. One wrong move and Oriala Station would be space dust. Cyrus must have sensed his fear because she reached out with one of her hands. My mother. She is wise. She will not attack if we are here. Your mother is on one of those ships. The golden one. She comes for us. Cirrus paused. She will want to meet you, the one who saved her daughters. Daniel thought about meeting the Elthar Queen, the leader of humanity's greatest rival, and wondered again how his life had taken such a dramatic turn. But before he could dwell on it, alarms started going off around Nira's bed. Dr. Yates rushed over, reading the displays. She's going into cardiac arrest. We need to... She stopped, looking at the readings again. This doesn't make sense. Her heart is in the wrong place. Elthar cardiac organ is here, Cirrus said urgently, pointing to a spot on the right side of her chest. Not where you think. Yates immediately adjusted her approach, but it was clear she was working blind. I need Elthar medical data, or we're going to lose her. Daniel made a decision. He activated his comm unit, bypassing the normal channels to broadcast directly to the Elthar fleet. This is Daniel Cross on Oriala Station. The younger princess is in medical distress. We need Elthar medical assistance immediately. The response was instant. Commander Thax appeared on the medical bay's main screen. What is her condition? Dr. Yates rattled off medical readings, most of which meant nothing to Daniel, but clearly meant something to the Elthar. Thax turned to someone off-screen, and within seconds, an Elthar in what looked like medical attire appeared. Human doctor, I am Healer Vax. Show me the youngling. What followed was the strangest medical consultation Daniel had ever witnessed. Dr. Yates and Healer Vax worked together across species lines, each translating their knowledge through the universal translator, finding common ground in basic biology and chemistry. Within minutes, they had stabilized Nira, though she remained unconscious. She needs Elthar-specific proteins for tissue regeneration, Healer Vax said. We can synthesize them, but it will take time. How much time? Yates asked. 16 hours minimum. Daniel looked at the displays showing the Elthar fleet. Dozens of ships, all waiting. Will they wait that long? As if in answer, a new image appeared on the screen. Daniel's breath caught. Even through the species difference, there was no mistaking royalty. Queen Zaratai of the Elthar Empire looked like her daughters. The same prismatic eyes, the same graceful four-armed form. But there was a weight to her presence that commanded attention. You are the one who saved my daughters. It wasn't a question. Daniel stood straighter. Yes, Your Majesty. She studied him for a long moment. My advisors tell me this could be a trap, that you might have orchestrated their injuries to gain leverage. With respect, Your Majesty, if we wanted leverage, we wouldn't have nearly killed ourselves saving them from a reactor breach. No, she agreed. You wouldn't. She looked past him to where Cirrus lay. Cirrus, my starlight, can you hear me? Cyrus's eyes, filled with what Daniel recognized as tears, though they shimmered like liquid crystal. Mother, I tried to protect Nira. I tried, but I failed. You survived, both of you. That is not failure. The Queen's attention returned to Daniel. What is your price, human? What do you want for my daughter's return? Nothing, Daniel said simply. They're children. They deserve to go home. The Queen's expression shifted to something Daniel couldn't read. Nothing. Your government will not be pleased with that answer. My government didn't save them. I did. And I don't want anything except for them to be safe. You would make a poor negotiator, Daniel Cross. Good thing I'm just a maintenance engineer then. Something that might have been amusement flickered across the Queen's features. Indeed. Very well. Healer Vax will provide the necessary medical data. My daughters will remain in your care until they are stable enough to transfer. You have my word that no harm will come to your station during this time. And after Commander Harrison had appeared in the doorway, flanked by security, the Queen's gaze shifted to Harrison. After, we will discuss how my daughters came to be abandoned in your station for 2 months. They were in a section we couldn't access safely, Harrison said. We had no idea anyone had survived. So you say. We shall see. The transmission ended, leaving the medical bay in tense silence. Harrison looked at Daniel. You realize you've just become the most important person on this station. I just wanted to fix a radiation leak, Daniel said weakly. Well, now you're fixing interstellar relations. Don't screw it up. As Harrison left, Cirrus tugged on Daniel's sleeve. You're scared. Terrified, he admitted. Why? Because if something goes wrong, a lot of people could die. Cyrus was quiet for a moment. Mother says that sometimes one person doing the right thing can change everything. Maybe you're that person. Daniel looked at the 2 alien children he'd saved, thought about the fleet of warships outside, the delicate balance of war and peace hanging by a thread, and wondered if a maintenance engineer from Earth really could change everything. Time would tell. The translation bracelet took 3 days to build. Daniel had worked on it during every spare moment, scavenging parts from damaged equipment and repurposing microprocessors from the station's recycling center. The device wasn't pretty, a mess of wires and circuits held together by industrial adhesive and hope. But when he fitted it around Cirrus's thin wrist, her eyes lit up with wonder. Can you understand me better now? He asked, speaking slowly and clearly. Your words are clearer, Cirrus replied, and for the first time, her voice through the translator carried emotional nuance, like removing fog from glass. Nira, who had finally awakened the day before, reached out with grabbing motions from her bed. Me too, want one too. Daniel had already started on a second bracelet, smaller and more refined. He'd learned from his mistakes on the first one. Tomorrow, little star. I promise. The nickname had come naturally. Nira's skin had tiny, bioluminescent spots that glowed softly when she was happy. creating patterns like constellations. She'd been delighted when he'd pointed it out. Even more so when he'd started calling her his little star. "You make things," Cirrus observed, watching him work. "Not just fix, create." "Sometimes fixing and creating are the same thing," Daniel replied, adjusting a microcircuit. "You take broken pieces and make something new." "Like us," she said quietly. "We were broken. You made us safe." The weight of her trust sat heavy on his shoulders. Outside the medical bay, the political situation grew more complex by the hour. The Elther fleet remained in position, weapons powered down but ready. Human reinforcements had arrived, including 2 battlecruisers that now flanked Orialis Station. Both sides waited, watched, and wondered what would happen when the princesses were well enough to travel. Daniel had been sleeping in the medical bay, officially as security, but really because Nira had nightmares if he wasn't there when she woke. Dr. Yates had given up trying to maintain proper medical protocol, especially after Cirrus had refused treatment from anyone except Daniel or Yates herself. "They've bonded with you," Yates had explained. "It's a trauma response, but also something more. Elthar young form deep attachments to their protectors. In their culture, saving a child's life creates a bond that's almost sacred." Daniel discovered the truth of this when Admiral Patterson arrived from Earth to take over negotiations. The man was everything Daniel wasn't: tall, commanding, with gray hair that suggested wisdom and eyes that had seen too much war. He'd entered the medical bay with an entourage of officers, intending to interview the princesses about their time in the station. Nira had taken one look at the uniformed strangers and started making a high-pitched sound that set everyone's teeth on edge. Cirrus had wrapped all 4 arms around her sister, baring her teeth at the Admiral in a display that was unmistakably hostile. "Stand down," Patterson had ordered, as if the children were soldiers. That's when Daniel had stepped between them. "With respect, Admiral, you're scaring them. These are valuable intelligence assets. Mr. Cross, we need information about that research facility. They're 8 and 6 years old. They've been through hell. Maybe we could try not adding to their trauma." Patterson's eyes had narrowed dangerously. "You forget yourself, Cross. You're a civilian contractor." "And their children under my protection," Daniel had replied, surprising himself with his boldness. "Dr. Yates, are these patients cleared for interrogation?" "Absolutely not," Yates had said firmly. "Any stress could cause a relapse, especially for Nira." Patterson had left, but not before making it clear that Daniel's interference wouldn't be forgotten. Since then, armed guards had been posted outside the medical bay, though whether they were protecting or imprisoning the occupants was unclear. The next crisis came from an unexpected source. Cirrus had been recovering well, able to walk with assistance, when she suddenly collapsed during a physical therapy session. Her skin, usually a healthy blue-gray, had turned almost translucent. "It's a nutritional deficiency," Healer Vax explained over the video link. "Our young require specific minerals during growth periods. Without them, their bodies begin to shut down." "What minerals?" Yates asked, already pulling up chemical databases. "Selenium compounds, but in a particular crystalline structure. We call it Vrexmar. It's found naturally on our worlds, but not on human stations," Daniel finished. "How long does she have?" 3 days, perhaps 4. Nira will follow within a week." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Can you send some—" "Any transport would be seen as a potential threat. Your military would never allow it." After the transmission ended, Daniel stood staring at the wall, mind racing. 3 days. He had 3 days to find a mineral that didn't exist in human space, or watch Cyrus die. Nira would follow, and with them would die any chance of peace. "You're thinking very loudly," Cirrus said from her bed. Despite her weakness, she managed a small smile. "Mother says humans are easy to read because you show everything on your faces." "Your mother's probably right," Daniel sat beside her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like floating away. Like becoming fog." She paused. "I'm dying, aren't I?" Daniel wanted to lie, to offer comfort, but Cirrus was too intelligent for platitudes. "We're working on it. You can't make Vrexmar from nothing. Even you, who makes miracles from scraps." She reached out and took his hand. "It's okay. You gave us more days than we would have had. Good days. I'm not giving up." "I know. It's why Nira loves you." As if summoned by her name, Nira stirred in the next bed. Daniel's story. It had become their routine. Earth stories at bedtime, translated through the improved bracelets into something the young Elthar could understand. Fairy tales, mostly, though he'd had to explain concepts like forests and wolves and magic that worked differently than their technology. "Which one tonight, little star?" "The one about the girl with the red hood. But change it so she makes friends with the wolf." Daniel smiled despite everything. Nira had strong opinions about his stories, usually involving fewer villains and more friendships. He'd started adapting them to her preferences, creating new versions where understanding replaced conflict. As he told the story, his mind wandered to the problem at hand. Selenium compounds in crystalline structure. The human body needed selenium too, but in tiny amounts and different forms. The station's greenhouse used selenium in some growth solutions, but again, wrong structure, unless... He paused mid-sentence, an idea forming. "Daniel," Nira prompted, "what happens next?" "The girl realizes the wolf isn't really bad," he continued, his mind racing. "He's just different, and different doesn't mean dangerous." After the children fell asleep, Daniel made his way to the station's industrial sector. If his idea worked, it would require breaking several regulations and possibly some laws. If it didn't work, none of that would matter anyway. The mining processing unit was officially decommissioned, but Daniel knew it still functioned. Miners sometimes used it for side projects, refining small amounts of rare minerals they'd found for personal profit. Technically illegal, but command looked the other way, as long as it didn't interfere with operations. Daniel fired up the processors and began feeding in every selenium-bearing compound he could find. Medical supplies, greenhouse nutrients, even selenium-enriched vitamins from the station store. The processor broke them down to base elements, then began rebuilding according to the specifications Daniel programmed, based on Healer Vax's descriptions. "What are you doing?" Daniel spun to find Sarah Martinez standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "Sarah, I can explain. You're using prohibited equipment to synthesize alien minerals for those kids." It wasn't a question. "Yes." She studied him for a long moment. "You need help." Relief flooded through him. "God, yes. I need someone to monitor the crystallization chamber while I adjust the pressure variance." They worked through the night, Martinez proving why she was the best supervisor on the station. She caught 3 potentially catastrophic errors and improved his synthesis process by 30%. By dawn, they had a small vial of crystalline powder that might, just might, be Vrexmar. "If this doesn't work," Martinez began. "Then at least we tried." They returned to find the medical bay in chaos. Admiral Patterson was back, this time with a full security detail and someone in a suit who looked like intelligence. "Mr. Cross, you're under arrest for unauthorized use of station resources and potential sabotage," Patterson announced. "What sabotage?" Daniel demanded. "The mining processor you illegally activated triggered security alerts. For all we know, you were building a weapon." "I was trying to save their lives." "That's not your job. Your job was to shut down a radiation leak. Everything since then has been interference with military operations." The suited man stepped forward. "We'll be taking custody of the aliens now. They'll be transferred to a secure facility for proper interrogation." "You can't move them," Dr. Yates protested. "They're too weak." "We have medical staff standing by." Daniel looked at Cirrus, who was barely conscious, then at Nira, whose constellation spots had gone dark with fear. Something snapped inside him. No. Patterson's hand moved to his sidearm. That wasn't a request. Cross. I said no. Daniel moved to stand between the officers and the children. You want to take them? You'll have to go through me. Daniel, Martinez warned. Don't do this. They're dying, Daniel said, holding up the vial of synthesized mineral. This might save them, but I need time to test it. You take them now. They're dead by tomorrow. That's not our problem, the intelligence officer said coldly. It will be when their mother glasses this station in retaliation. A new voice cut through the tension. Perhaps I can offer a perspective. Everyone turned to see Commander Harrison in the doorway, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood an Elthar in elaborate robes, clearly a diplomat rather than military. This is Ambassador Kretak, Harrison announced. The Queen sent him to observe. The ambassador's 4 eyes took in the scene, lingering on the security weapons pointed at Daniel. Interesting. The human who saved the princesses is being arrested for trying to save them again. The Queen will find this illuminating. Patterson's jaw clenched. This is an internal matter. Nothing involving the royal daughters is internal. Admiral Kretak moved past the security officers as if they didn't exist, approaching the beds where the children lay. He said something in Elthar, and Cirrus responded weakly. She confirms what your commander told me, Kretak said, turning back to the room. This human, Cross, has been their protector. She says he is... He paused, searching for the translation. Family by choice. That's not a recognized legal status, Patterson started. It is to us, Kretak interrupted. And since these are Elthar children, our laws apply. Any harm to their chosen protector would be seen as an attack on the royal family itself. The standoff stretched taut as a wire. Daniel could feel the weight of every weapon in the room, the careful balance of forces that could tip into violence with one wrong word. Admiral, Harrison said quietly, perhaps we should discuss this in my office. All of us. Let the medical staff do their work. Patterson clearly wanted to refuse, but the political implications were too severe. 1 hour. Cross. If that mineral doesn't work, we do this my way. As the officers filed out, leaving only the ambassador, Daniel rushed to Cirrus's bed. I need you to drink this, he said, mixing the mineral powder with water. It might taste strange. Everything here tastes strange, she managed, accepting the cup with shaking hands. Daniel helped her drink, then prepared a smaller dose for Nira. All they could do now was wait. You risked much, Ambassador Kretak observed. Your own people would punish you for helping us. Some would, Daniel admitted. Others understand that kindness doesn't recognize species. The Queen will want to meet you when the princesses are returned. If they survive. Yes, if... The next hour was the longest of Daniel's life. He monitored their vital signs, watched for any change, any sign that the synthesized mineral was working. Nira fell asleep, but her breathing seemed easier. Cirrus stayed awake, her eyes fixed on Daniel. Tell me about Earth, she said suddenly. What do you want to know? Everything. The forest Nira likes from your stories, the oceans, the cities. Tell me about your home. So Daniel talked. He told her about the Pacific Northwest where he'd grown up, the towering pines and morning mist. He described the ocean, vast and blue and teeming with life. He talked about cities that reached toward the sky and small towns where everyone knew everyone. He painted Earth with words, and Cirrus absorbed every detail. It sounds beautiful, she murmured. I would like to see it. Maybe someday you will, when things are better between our people. Because of us. Because of you. Yes. You and Nira are proof that we don't have to be enemies. Cyrus squeezed his hand. We were never enemies, Daniel. We were just strangers who hadn't met yet. Dr. Yates checked the monitors and gasped. "Daniel, look at this." The readouts showed clear improvement. Cirrus's cells were absorbing the synthesized mineral, using it to repair the damage. It was working. "How?" Yates breathed. "How did you know how to make this?" "I didn't," Daniel admitted. "I just refused to accept that it was impossible." Word spread quickly. Within minutes, Harrison and the ambassador had returned, though Patterson and his security detail remained notably absent. "The Admiral has been recalled to Fleet Command," Harrison explained, with a carefully neutral expression. "Apparently, someone very high up was unhappy with his approach to the situation." "The Queen," Ambassador Kretok confirmed. "She made it clear that any harm to her daughter's protector would be considered an act of war. Your president agreed that a different approach was needed." Daniel felt his knees go weak with relief. "So what happens now?" "Now, we wait for the princesses to recover. Then," the ambassador paused, "then we navigate the complex path between our peoples. The Queen has questions about how her daughters ended up abandoned. Your government has questions about the research facility. But perhaps, with bridge builders like yourself, we can find answers without bloodshed." Over the next week, the children's recovery accelerated. The synthesized mineral had worked better than anyone had hoped. And soon, both Cirrus and Nira were up and moving around. They never strayed far from Daniel, though, and he found himself officially reassigned as their liaison. The translation bracelets had evolved too. Version 3 included basic gesture recognition, allowing for more natural communication. Daniel was even learning some Elthar phrases, though his pronunciation made Nira giggle every time. "You sound like you're sneezing," she told him after one particularly bad attempt. "At least I'm trying," he protested. "Try harder," Cirrus suggested with mock seriousness, then broke into what Daniel had learned was an Elthar smile. The day finally came when they were cleared for transfer. A shuttle would take them to the neutral station Celestara, where the formal exchange would happen. Daniel would accompany them, despite the very real possibility that the Elthar might not let him return. "You don't have to do this," Harrison told him the night before departure. "You've already done more than anyone could expect." "I promised I'd keep them safe," Daniel replied. "That doesn't end at the station's border." "The Queen might blame you for what happened. 2 months in that damaged section. She might need someone to punish." "Then she punishes me, but I don't think she will." "Why not?" Daniel thought about it. "Because Cirrus has her mother's eyes. Not just the color or shape, but the intelligence behind them. She'll see the truth." The next morning, Daniel stood in the docking bay with 2 small Elthar children, holding his hands. Cirrus carried a bag with her few possessions, including a datapad where Daniel had loaded hundreds of Earth stories. Nira clutched a small mechanical toy he'd made for her, a bird that flapped its wings when wound up. "Ready?" he asked them. "No," Cirrus admitted, "but brave anyway." "Brave anyway," Nira repeated, squeezing his hand tighter. As they boarded the shuttle, Daniel caught a reflection in the polished hull. A maintenance engineer in an orange jacket, holding hands with 2 alien princesses. 6 weeks ago, he would have called anyone crazy who suggested this future. Now, he couldn't imagine any other path. The shuttle doors closed, and they lifted off, leaving Orialis Station behind. Ahead lay Celestara, the Elthar fleet, and a meeting with the Queen. But for now, in this moment, Daniel focused on the 2 small hands in his, the trust they represented, and the bridge they were building between worlds. "Daniel," Nira asked, as they watched the stars streak by, "will we still be family when we get there?" "Always, little star. No matter what happens. That doesn't change." "Promise." "Promise." Cyrus leaned against his shoulder, something she'd started doing when she was tired or worried. "Mother will like you," she said quietly. "How could she not? You gave her back her daughters." Daniel hoped she was right. But even if she wasn't, even if this ended badly for him, he wouldn't change anything. Some choices defined who you were, and saving these children had defined him in ways he was only beginning to understand. The stars continued their silent dance outside the viewport, and three unlikely family members flew toward an uncertain future, held together by bonds stronger than politics, stronger than species, stronger than fear. They flew toward hope. The news broke across the galactic networks while they were still in transit to Celestara Station. Daniel watched the headlines scroll across the shuttle's communication screen with growing disbelief. Human engineer kidnaps Elthar princesses in bold power play. Cross conspiracy: how one man triggered an interstellar crisis. Bounty posted 50 million credits for Daniel Cross, dead or alive. Cyrus read over his shoulder, her improved translation bracelet helping her parse the human text. They're lying about you. They're scared, Daniel corrected, though his hands had started shaking. Both sides are scared, and scared people need someone to blame. The shuttle pilot, a nervous young ensign named Rivera, kept glancing back at them. Mr. Cross, we're getting multiple communication requests. Admiral Patterson wants to speak with you, and there's something from the Elthar fleet. Ignore Patterson. What's the Elthar message? Rivera's face went pale as he read it. It's a bounty notice. The Elthar Empire is offering 30 million zeni for your capture. They're calling you a terrorist. Nira made a distressed sound, pressing closer to Daniel's side. But you saved us. They don't know that little star. All they know is what they've been told. The truth was more complex, and Daniel could piece it together from the fragmented news reports. The Elthar military faction, led by General Varric, had spun a narrative where Daniel was a human operative who had kidnapped the princesses to use as bargaining chips. Meanwhile, human hardliners were claiming he was a traitor who'd sold out to the aliens. Both sides had found their scapegoat. Mr. Cross, Rivera called out, his voice now genuinely frightened. We're being targeted. 3 ships. Configuration unknown. Daniel moved to the cockpit, the children close behind. The tactical display showed 3 vessels closing fast, their signatures neither fully human nor Elthar. Pirates, Daniel breathed. They're after the bounty. What do we do? Rivera's training was failing him in the face of real danger. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities. The shuttle had minimal defensive capabilities. They couldn't outrun the pirates. But maybe. Send a broad-spectrum distress call, he ordered. Make sure everyone knows we have the princesses aboard. That'll bring every bounty hunter in the sector. Exactly. Too many for them to fight each other and catch us. Do it. Rivera's hands flew over the controls. Within seconds, their position was broadcasting across every frequency. The response was immediate. The tactical display lit up with new contacts, ships changing course to intercept. Oh God, Rivera whispered. There's dozens of them. Cyrus, Daniel said urgently. Can you send a message to your mother? Tell her exactly where we are. The young Elthar's fingers danced over her datapad, using the emergency protocols her mother had taught her years ago. Sent, but she's far away. We just need to buy time. The first pirates reached them 20 minutes later. The shuttle shook as warning shots crossed their bow. Daniel strapped the children into crash seats, then took the co-pilot position. They're demanding we prepare for boarding, Rivera reported. Stall them. Tell them we have engine problems. They won't believe. The shuttle lurched violently as a tractor beam caught them. Through the viewport, Daniel could see the pirate vessel, a converted mining ship bristling with illegal weapons. But beyond it, other ships were converging, and the pirates were getting nervous. New contact, Rivera shouted. It's huge. Space seemed to ripple, and a massive Elthar battlecruiser dropped out of hyperspace directly above them. The Queen's personal flagship, the Stellar Embrace, dwarfed every other vessel in the area. Its weapons powered up with a sound that somehow carried through the vacuum, a deep thrumming that Daniel felt in his bones. The pirates scattered like roaches exposed to light, but they weren't fast enough. The battlecruiser's secondary batteries opened fire with surgical precision, disabling engines and weapons without destroying the ships. It was a display of power and control that left no doubt about Elthar's superiority. A new voice came through the shuttle's comm system. "Human shuttle, this is Queen Zaratai. You will dock with my vessel immediately." Rivera looked at Daniel with naked fear. "She'll kill us. She'll kill you." "Maybe," Daniel admitted, "but she won't hurt her daughters." The docking was eerily smooth, tractor beams guiding them into a bay that could have held a dozen shuttles. As the atmospheric shields engaged and air flooded the space, Daniel could see hundreds of Elthar soldiers arranged in perfect formation. At their head stood General Varric, his forearms holding a ceremonial weapon that looked very functional despite its decorative nature. "Stay behind me," Daniel told the children as the shuttle's ramp lowered. "No," Cirrus said firmly. "We stand together." They walked down the ramp hand in hand, Daniel in the middle with a princess on each side. The silence in the docking bay was absolute until Varric stepped forward. Daniel Cross, his translator, rendered his words in clipped, hostile tones. "You are under arrest for kidnapping, terrorism, and crimes against the Empire." "He didn't kidnap us," Nira shouted, her small voice echoing in the vast space. "He saved us, tell them, Cirrus." "Silence, youngling," Varric commanded. "You've been traumatized. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Cirrus stepped forward, pulling Daniel with her. "Where is my mother?" "The Queen is in the throne room. You'll be taken to medical for evaluation." "We go to Mother, now all three of us." Varric's mandibles clicked in what Daniel had learned was frustration. "The human is a prisoner. The human is our family." Cirrus's voice carried a royal authority that seemed impossible from someone so young. "You will take us to Mother, or I will tell her how you pointed weapons at us." The general's 4 eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. "Escort them. Full guard." The walk through the battlecruiser was surreal. The corridors were organic curves, rather than human straight lines, lit by bioluminescent panels that shifted color based on some pattern Daniel couldn't discern. Elthar crew members stopped to stare as they passed, whispers following in their wake. Daniel caught fragments through his translator. "The human. Princesses. Impossible." The throne room doors were 3 times Daniel's height, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. They opened silently, revealing a space that took his breath away. It wasn't just a room. It was an environment. The ceiling showed a real-time view of space outside the ship, stars wheeling slowly overhead. The floor was some kind of living crystal that chimed softly with each footstep. And at the center, on a throne that grew from the floor like a tree of light, sat Queen Zaratai. She was magnificent and terrible, beautiful and alien in ways that Daniel's human mind struggled to process. Her 4 arms were arranged in a formal position he didn't recognize, and her prismatic eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. But when those eyes found her daughters, everything changed. The rigid posture melted, and she was simply a mother seeing her children for the first time in months. "My lights!" she breathed, and Cirrus and Nira ran to her. The reunion was both touching and alien. The Queen's 4 arms enveloped both children, and they communicated in rapid trills and light patterns that no translator could parse. Daniel stood forgotten, surrounded by guards, watching the family he'd protected find each other again. Finally, the Queen's attention turned to him. She didn't speak, just studied him with those impossible eyes. The silence stretched until Daniel felt compelled to fill it. "Your Majesty, I'm glad your daughters are safe." "You're glad." Her voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "Tell me, Daniel Cross, what game are you playing?" "No game. I found 2 scared children and helped them. That's all." That's all. You violated your own people's orders. You risked war between our species. You made yourself a fugitive from both empires. And you claim it was all just to help two children you'd never met. Yes. Why? Daniel thought about lying, about crafting some elaborate justification. But Cirrus was watching him, and he'd promised her to always be honest. Because leaving them to die would have broken something in me that could never be fixed. The Queen tilted her head, a gesture eerily similar to one Cirrus often made. General Varric believes you're a spy, that this entire situation is an elaborate human plot. General Varric is wrong. You speak boldly for a prisoner. I speak honestly. Your daughters were in a damaged section for 2 months because neither side knew to look for them. I found them by accident during emergency repairs. Everything since then has been me trying to keep them alive and get them home. And what did you hope to gain? Nothing. Everyone wants something human. Daniel looked at Cirrus and Nira, safe in their mother's arms. I wanted them to live. I got what I wanted. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in Elthar to her daughters. Cirrus responded at length, gesturing frequently at Daniel. Nira added her own comments, at one point pulling out the mechanical bird Daniel had made for her to show her mother. My daughters tell an interesting story, the Queen finally said. They say you learned our language for them, that you created translation devices to better understand them, that you synthesized Vrexmar from base elements when they were dying. Dr. Yates and Sarah Martinez helped with that. I couldn't have done it alone. They also say you told them stories, Earth stories, but changed to be less violent. Nira prefers happy endings. And they say you stood between them and your own military when they tried to take them away. They were scared. I promised to protect them. The Queen rose from her throne, her daughters moving aside. She descended the steps slowly, each movement deliberate, until she stood directly before Daniel. This close. He could see that her prismatic eyes weren't uniform, but contained countless individual facets, each reflecting a slightly different angle of light. Do you know what my daughters call you in our language? No, Your Majesty. Keth Marie. It means guardian who chooses. It's a sacred concept among our people, one who protects not from duty or blood, but from choice. In our entire history, no human has ever been given this title. She reached out with one hand, and Daniel fought the instinct to step back. Her fingers touched his forehead briefly, and he felt a strange, tingling sensation. You are marked now, Daniel Cross. Every Elthar will know what you did. Some will honor you for it. Others, she glanced at Varric, will hate you more. Mother, Cirrus said suddenly, show him. The Queen's expression shifted to something Daniel couldn't read. She gestured, and the throne room's walls came alive with images. Security footage, Daniel realized, but not from Orialis Station. It was from the damaged section, where he'd found the children. The timestamp showed 3 weeks before his rescue. He watched in horror as Cirrus, clearly weakening from starvation, gave most of their remaining food to Nira. He saw her trying to repair the damaged communication equipment with her small fingers, saw her holding Nira during what must have been terrifying nights in the dark. My daughter kept her sister alive for 2 months, the Queen said softly. A child, forced to be a guardian, until you came. The images shifted to thermal footage from the station's security system. Daniel saw himself running through the corridors, carrying both children, the reactor countdown visible in the corner of the screen. He watched himself argue with his supervisor, face the security team, stand against Admiral Patterson. Every moment, you chose them over yourself, the Queen observed. Why do you think that is? Daniel watched his thermal image hold Nira while she cried from pain, saw himself working through the night to build the translation bracelets. Because it was right. Right. The Queen seemed to taste the word. Such a simple concept for such a complex action. An alert chimed, and one of the Queen's advisors approached, whispering urgently. Her expression darkened. It seems your Admiral Patterson has formally demanded your return. He's claiming you stole classified information and sabotaged station equipment. I didn't. I know, but he needs someone to blame for this diplomatic crisis. And you're convenient. She turned back to her throne. So I have a decision to make. Do I return you to face your human justice? Do I keep you as a prisoner to satisfy my generals? Or, Daniel prompted when she didn't continue. Or I do something unprecedented. She sat back on her throne, her daughters taking positions on either side. Cirrus, Nira approach. The princesses walked to Daniel, each taking one of his hands. Daniel Cross, the Queen said formally, her voice carrying throughout the throne room. My daughters have named you Keth Marie. By ancient law, this gives you the right of protection under the royal family. But protection comes with obligation. You would become their official guardian, responsible for their safety and education. You would live among us, learn our ways, help them bridge our two cultures. Mother, Cirrus gasped. Really? If he accepts. But know this. Human. Accepting means exile from your own people. You would be seen as a traitor who chose aliens over humanity. Your name would be cursed among your kind. Is saving my daughters worth that price? Daniel looked down at the two small faces looking up at him with hope and fear in equal measure. He thought about his life on Orialis Station, the empty quarters, the endless maintenance shifts, the 5-year contract that had felt like a prison sentence. Then he thought about these past weeks, the joy in Nira's eyes when he'd fixed her toy, Cirrus's trust when she'd told him about their ordeal, the feeling of purpose he'd found in protecting them. Your Majesty, he said carefully, would this position help prevent war between our peoples? It might. A human raising Elthar princesses, teaching them about Earth while they teach you about us. It could be the bridge our species need. Then yes, I accept. The throne room erupted. General Varick's protest was the loudest, but others joined him. The Queen raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. The human has chosen Cirrus, Nira. Do you accept him as Keth Marie? Yes, Nira shouted, jumping up to hug Daniel's leg. Yes, Cirrus said more formally, but her eyes were bright with happiness. Then it is done. Daniel Cross, you are now of the Elthar Empire. May the stars forgive us all for what comes next. The next hours passed in a blur. Daniel was given quarters near the princesses, provided with clothing that actually fit his human frame, but incorporated Elthar designs, and began intensive language lessons. The neural implant they provided made learning faster, though it gave him a constant mild headache. News of his defection, as Earth called it, spread quickly. Within a day, his face was on every wanted poster in human space. His accounts were frozen, his citizenship revoked, his name added to the terrorist watch list. The only message that got through was from Sarah Martinez. You did the right thing. Good luck. But in the Elthar sections of the ship, something different was happening. Crew members who had initially viewed him with suspicion began nodding respectfully when he passed. The medical staff who examined him were professionally curious about human physiology, but treated him with courtesy. And the princesses. Daniel. Nira bounded into his quarters without warning, a habit she'd developed that the guards had given up trying to prevent. Look what I learned in school today. She demonstrated a complex light pattern with her bioluminescent spots, creating what looked like a small galaxy across her skin. That's beautiful, little star. What does it mean? It means family. But watch, she adjusted the pattern slightly. Now it means chosen family. That's you. Cyrus entered more sedately, carrying a data pad. Mother wants you to attend the military briefing tomorrow. Why? Because General Varick is pushing for an aggressive response to the human fleet movements. Mother thinks your perspective might be valuable. Daniel sighed. He'd been thrust into the middle of interstellar politics without a handbook or a net. I'm an engineer, not a diplomat. You're Keth Marie, Cirrus corrected. That makes you many things. That night, Daniel stood at his window watching the stars wheel by. Somewhere among them was Earth, the home he could never return to. Somewhere was Aurealis Station, where this had all begun. He'd gone from fixing radiation leaks to trying to prevent interstellar war, from being nobody to being possibly the most hated human in the galaxy. A small hand slipped into his. Nira had approached silently, a skill she was disturbingly good at. "Are you sad?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. "Because of your people? Because I can't fix this the way I fix machines. I can't make humans and Elthar trust each other with spare parts and determination." "Maybe not," she said. "But you made Mother trust you. That's a start." Another hand took his other side. Cirrus stood there, looking too serious for her age. "We have a saying," she said. "The longest journey begins with someone brave enough to take the first step." "Who took the first step here?" Daniel asked. "You did, when you picked us up instead of running away." Daniel squeezed both their hands. "We all did. We're all taking steps together." They stood together, watching the stars. An unlikely family bound by choice rather than blood. Bridges between two species that had forgotten how to see each other as anything but enemies. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new impossible situations. But tonight, Daniel Cross, former maintenance engineer, current guardian of alien princesses, and future hope for peace, was exactly where he needed to be. Celestara Station hung in the void between empires like a jewel of impossible neutrality. Built jointly by 12 species over 3 centuries ago, it was the only place in the galaxy where sworn enemies could meet without weapons drawn. Its crystalline structure caught and refracted starlight into rainbow patterns that danced across its hull. A deliberate design choice meant to remind visitors that beauty could emerge from cooperation. Daniel stood in his assigned quarters, struggling with the formal Elthar robes he was expected to wear. The fabric seemed alive, adjusting to his body temperature and shifting colors based on his emotional state. Currently, it was a nervous purple-gray that probably told everyone exactly how he felt about the upcoming negotiations. "You're doing it wrong," Cirrus said from the doorway. She entered and began adjusting the robes with practiced efficiency. "The third layer goes under, not over, and you need to activate the dignity field." "The what?" She touched a hidden sensor, and suddenly the robes fell perfectly, moving with an ethereal grace that made him look almost regal. Dignity field. It maintains proper appearance regardless of movement. Mother says humans always forget about it. "Your mother says a lot about humans." "She's been studying your species for 40 years, ever since the first border conflict." Cirrus stepped back to examine her work. "You look almost Elthar now, except for the 2 arms thing." Nira burst in, wearing her own formal robes in shimmering silver. "Daniel, there are humans here. I saw them from the observation deck. They look angry. Most humans look angry to you, little star. These ones looked extra angry. One of them had a face like this." She scrunched up her features in an exaggerated scowl that made Daniel laugh despite his nerves. "That's probably Admiral Patterson, the mean one who wanted to take us away." "The very same." A soft chime indicated someone at the door. Ambassador Kretok entered, his ceremonial robes making Daniel's look simple by comparison. "The Queen requests your presence in the preparation chamber. Both delegations have arrived." The preparation chamber was a circular room with walls of living wood from the Zalathi homeworld, supposedly promoting calm and clear thinking. The Queen stood at its center, surrounded by advisors, with General Varric conspicuously present in full military regalia. "Daniel." The Queen acknowledged him with a nod. "The human delegation has made an unusual request. They want to speak with you privately before negotiations begin. That's a trap, Varric said immediately. They'll try to eliminate him or force him to recant his support for us. Perhaps, but refusing might be seen as hiding something. The Queen studied Daniel. The choice is yours. You're under no obligation to meet with them. Daniel thought about it. Running from his own people would only confirm their worst assumptions about him. I'll meet with them, but Cirrus and Nera stay here. No, Nera protested. We stay together. Not this time, little star. These are people who think I betrayed them. I don't want you near that anger. The meeting room the humans had chosen was stark and utilitarian, a deliberate contrast to the organic Elthar spaces. Admiral Patterson was there, of course, along with two people Daniel didn't recognize, a woman in diplomatic corps uniform and a man in civilian clothes who somehow radiated intelligence operative. Cross, Patterson said without preamble. You look ridiculous in that getup. Admiral, you look exactly the same. Still making jokes. Do you have any idea what you've done? The political shitstorm you've created? I saved 2 children. You committed treason. The intelligence operative's voice was soft, cultured, dangerous. I'm Agent Foster, Strategic Intelligence Division. We've been analyzing your actions, trying to understand if you're a traitor, insane, or just monumentally stupid. What did you conclude? That you're a romantic fool who's been manipulated by alien pheromones or mind control? Daniel laughed, which clearly wasn't the response they expected. Mind control, really? You think the Elthar needed mind control to make me save dying children? The timing is suspicious, the diplomat said. She had sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. You just happened to find the Queen's daughters. Just happened to be the only one who could save them. Yes, sometimes accidents happen. Sometimes the universe puts you where you need to be. The universe, Patterson said with disgust. Listen to yourself. You sound like one of them. Maybe because I've been living with them, learning their language, their culture. Things you might try if you actually wanted peace instead of just the absence of war. Foster leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Cross. You're going to publicly renounce your association with the Elthar. You'll testify that you were coerced, that they threatened the children if you didn't comply. In exchange, we'll reduce the charges against you to unauthorized absence. You'll serve 5 years in minimum security and have a chance at a life afterward. No, you don't even want to hear. There's nothing to hear. I'm not lying about Cirrus and Nera. I'm not betraying their trust to save my own skin. They're aliens. Cross. Patterson slammed his hand on the table. They're not your family. They're not even your species when this war heats up. And it will. They'll turn on you in a heartbeat. You're wrong. Am I their mother is playing you, using her daughters to create a sympathetic narrative while she prepares for invasion? The Queen had the firepower to destroy Orialis Station whenever she wanted. She didn't. She could have taken her daughters by force. She didn't. Every aggressive move has come from our side or theirs, but never from her directly. You're naive. Daniel stood. I'm done here, unless you're arresting me. We can't arrest you, the diplomat said quietly. You're technically an Elthar citizen now. Attempting to detain you would violate the neutrality accords. But know this, Foster added. If you continue this charade, if you stand with them in these negotiations, you'll never be human again in the eyes of your people. Then I guess I'll have to be something else. He left them there, returning to find the Elthar delegation in final preparations. Nera immediately attached herself to his side, sensing his emotional turmoil through some child's intuition that transcended species. Were they mean to you? She asked. They're afraid, little star. Fear makes everyone mean. The negotiation chamber was a masterpiece of neutral architecture. The ceiling showed a real-time view of the galaxy, stars slowly rotating around the supermassive black hole at its center. The floor was divided into 3 sections, one that accommodated human preferences, one designed for Elthar comfort, and a central neutral zone where both species could meet. The human delegation had grown. Along with Patterson, Foster, and the diplomat Daniel, now new as Ambassador Rachel Hartley. There were military advisors, cultural experts, and what looked like a medical team. The Elthar side was equally impressive, with the Queen at its center, flanked by Varric and Kretok, surrounded by their own experts. And in the middle, like a bridge between worlds, stood a figure Daniel recognized from news feeds, mediator Cyclax of the Concordance, a being from a species that had evolved beyond physical form, but maintained a projected presence for interactions with corporeal races. "We gather." Cyclax's voice resonated in everyone's mind simultaneously. To address the crisis precipitated by recent events, the recovery of the Elthar princesses, the actions of the human Daniel Cross, the military buildups on both sides. Speak and be heard. Ambassador Hartley stood first. The human government demands the immediate return of Daniel Cross to face charges of treason, theft of government property, and endangering interstellar peace. General Varric responded immediately. The Elthar Empire demands compensation for the imprisonment and near death of royal family members, and the prosecution of those responsible for abandoning them. "They were not abandoned," Patterson interjected. "The section was sealed after your attack. An attack provoked by human expansion into contested territory. Territory you claimed after we'd already established." "Enough." The Queen's voice cut through the argument like a blade. She stood, and the room fell silent. "We are here because 2 children nearly died. Everything else is politics." "Politics that could lead to war," Hartley said carefully. "Yes, which is why I propose something different." The Queen gestured, and Cirrus and Nira stepped forward. Daniel started to stop them, but Cirrus shook her head slightly. "For 2 months," Cirrus said, her young voice clear and strong. "My sister and I survived in darkness. We were not imprisoned by humans or abandoned by Elthar. We were victims of the conflict between our people, casualties of a war that benefits no one." Nira added, "Daniel saved us, not because he had to, not for gain things, because he saw scared children who needed help." "Your Majesty," Varric said urgently, "the princesses are too young to—" "My daughters have earned the right to speak. They survived what would have killed most adults. Continue, my lights." Cyrus looked directly at the human delegation. "You call Daniel a traitor, but he never betrayed humanity. He represented the best of it: compassion, sacrifice, love that doesn't see species or politics. And you," Nira turned to Varric, "you say humans are monsters, but Daniel sang to me when I was scared. He made me toys. He learned our language so I wouldn't feel alone." The room was utterly silent. Even Patterson seemed affected by the simple honesty of children who had suffered because of adult failures. "What do you propose?" Mediator Cyclax asked the Queen. "A new paradigm. My daughters have chosen Daniel Cross as their Keth Marie. By our laws, this makes him family. By human laws, this makes him a traitor. But what if we saw it differently? What if he became not a point of conflict, but a bridge?" "Explain," Hartley said, leaning forward with interest. "Daniel will remain with my daughters as their guardian and teacher, but he will also serve as a cultural liaison. Human children will be invited to study on Elthar worlds, with Daniel overseeing their safety and education. Elthar young will visit Earth, learning human ways, not as exchanges or hostages, but as students, as friends." "You're proposing integration," Foster said slowly, "starting with children." "Children don't see enemies," the Queen replied. "They see playmates. My daughters taught me this." "This is unprecedented," Patterson protested. "The security risks alone are manageable," Hartley interrupted him, "with proper protocols and oversight." "You can't be seriously considering this." "I'm considering peace, Admiral. Real peace. not just a ceasefire waiting to break. Daniel felt like he should say something, but Cirrus caught his hand and squeezed. Not yet. The gesture seemed to say, "There would need to be safeguards," Foster said. "Monitoring, verification that no indoctrination is occurring." "Agreed," the Queen said immediately. "Full transparency, regular reports from Daniel and other liaisons." "And if something goes wrong," Patterson demanded, "if one of these children is hurt, then we handle it as what it is, an individual incident, not an act of war," Kretok suggested. "We have let too many accidents become excuses for violence." The negotiation continued for hours. Details were debated, concerns raised, solutions proposed. Daniel watched it all with a mixture of hope and disbelief. They were actually considering it, a real cultural exchange, with him at its center. During a break, he found himself at the observation deck with the princesses. Earth's sun was a distant star from here, barely visible among millions of others. "Did you know this would happen?" he asked Cirrus. "Mother has been thinking about it since she saw the footage of you saving us. But she needed the humans to see you with us, to understand that connection is possible." "So this whole thing was theater?" "No. It was truth performed for those who couldn't see it otherwise." Nira tugged on his robes. "Daniel, when human children come to visit, can I show them my light patterns?" "Of course, little star." "And teach them our games and tell them our stories." "All of that." She smiled, her bioluminescent spots glowing happily. "Good. I want them to see we're not scary." When negotiations resumed, the tone had shifted. The initial hostility had given way to cautious interest. Details were hammered out: how many children, from what ages, for how long. Daniel would oversee the first group of 12 human children, aged 8 to 14, who would spend 6 months on the Elthar homeworld. An equal number of Elthar young would visit Earth under the supervision of a joint human-Elthar team. "There's still the matter of Cross's legal status," Foster pointed out. "He can't return to Earth as a wanted criminal." "Pardoned," Hartley said decisively. "Full amnesty for any alleged crimes, in recognition of his unique service to interstellar peace." Patterson looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "The military won't accept this." "The military will follow civilian leadership," Hartley responded coldly. "That's how our system works, Admiral." "And General Varric," the Queen asked, "will you accept this arrangement?" The general's 4 eyes fixed on Daniel with undisguised hatred. "A human influencing royal children, teaching them alien ways. It goes against everything. Everything that has brought us to the edge of war." The Queen interrupted. "Your way has been tried, General. Now we try something new." "I formally protest." "Noted and overruled." As the formal agreements were being drafted, Daniel found himself standing in the neutral zone with Ambassador Hartley. "You know this is just the beginning," she said. "If this fails, if anything happens to those children, you'll be blamed by both sides." "I know. So why do it?" Daniel looked at where Cirrus and Nira were showing some of the human delegation their light pattern communication. The humans, fascinated despite themselves. "Because they're the future. If they can learn to see each other as friends now, maybe they won't see enemies later." "You're betting everything on children." "Children saved me first. Seems fair to return the favor." The signing ceremony was deliberately simple. No grand speeches or elaborate rituals. Just 2 leaders putting their names to an agreement that might change the galaxy. As the Queen signed, her daughters stood beside her. As Ambassador Hartley signed, she looked at Daniel with something that might have been respect. "The Cross Initiative," Hartley announced, "named for the human who reminded us that compassion transcends species." Daniel felt his face burn. "That's not necessary." "It is," the Queen said. "Let both our peoples remember who showed us this path." As the delegations prepared to depart, Patterson approached Daniel one last time. "You know I still think you're a fool." "I know." "But—" The Admiral paused, struggling with words. My granddaughter is 7. She wants to be a xenobiologist. Studies every alien species she can find data on. Maybe she could be in one of the later groups. Daniel smiled. I'd be honored to teach her. Patterson nodded stiffly and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. That night, aboard the Queen's ship, Daniel stood in the observation lounge with his charges. Cirrus was reading reports about the human children who had volunteered for the program, while Nira was drawing pictures of what she wanted to show them on her homeworld. Scared, Cirrus asked without looking up. Terrified, Daniel admitted. I'm going to be responsible for 12 human children in alien space. Their parents are trusting me with their kids' lives. Like Mother trusted you with ours. That was different. That was instinct. Cirrus looked at him with those wise beyond her years eyes. Sometimes the best decisions come from instinct, not logic. When did you get so philosophical? When I spent 2 months in the dark thinking we were going to die. Her voice was matter of fact, but Daniel heard the pain underneath. I had a lot of time to think about what matters. And what matters is connection, understanding, the things that make us similar, not different. Nira climbed into his lap. Something she'd started doing that initially alarmed the Elthar who saw it. Physical affection between species was rare, but Nira didn't care about rare. Tell us a story, she demanded. A new one. About what? About human children and Elthar children being friends. Daniel thought for a moment, then began. Once upon a time, in a space station between the stars, human children and Elthar children met for the first time. They were scared at first, because they'd been told stories about each other. Bad stories. Scary stories. But the stories were wrong, Nira interrupted. Yes, they were wrong. And when the children started talking, really talking, they found out something amazing. What Cirrus asked, playing along. They found out that everyone, no matter how many arms they have or what color their skin is, everyone wants the same things. Friends to play with, stories to share, someone to hold their hand when they're scared. Like you hold ours, Nira said sleepily. Like I hold yours. As Nira drifted off to sleep, and Cirrus returned to her reading, Daniel thought about the journey ahead. In a few weeks, 12 human children would arrive, putting their lives in his hands. He'd have to teach them, protect them, help them navigate an alien culture while maintaining their own identity. It was an impossible task. But then again, so was saving 2 alien princesses from a radiation leak. So was synthesizing an alien mineral from base elements. So was standing between species on the brink of war and finding a path to peace. Maybe impossible was just another word for hasn't been done yet. The stars continued their eternal dance outside the viewport, and Daniel Cross, former maintenance engineer, current guardian of alien princesses, and future architect of interspecies understanding, began planning for the impossible. Daniel, Cirrus said quietly. Yes. Thank you for everything. Thank you for trusting me. That was easy. You're very trustable. That's not a word. It is now. I'm a princess. I can make up words. Daniel laughed, and Nira stirred in his lap, murmuring something about chocolate in her sleep. Apparently, his description of Earth foods had made an impression. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. General Varric was already maneuvering against the agreement, and there were certainly human factions that would try to sabotage it as well. The first group of children would arrive scared and homesick. There would be cultural misunderstandings, possibly dangerous ones. But tonight, in this quiet moment between chaos, Daniel held on to hope, 2 small hands in his, one sleeping child's trust, another's quiet companionship, and the possibility that the galaxy might be different because a maintenance engineer couldn't walk away from children in need. The Queen found them there an hour later, Nira asleep in Daniel's arms, Cirrus leaning against his shoulder, all 3 watching the stars. My advisors tell me I'm taking an enormous risk, she said softly, not wanting to wake Nira. You are... They say you could betray us, turn the children against us, use your influence to weaken us from within. I could... But you won't. No. How can I be so certain? Daniel looked down at the sleeping child in his arms, then at the older sister, who'd started to doze against his shoulder. Because I love them, not as possessions or symbols or bridges between species, just as themselves. As Cirrus, who's too serious and too brave. As Nera, who makes everything into an adventure. That's not the kind of love that betrays. The Queen studied him for a long moment. You know, in all our planning, all our scenarios for human-Elthar interaction, we never considered this. Considered what? That someone might simply choose to love across species lines. Without agenda. Without purpose. Just because. Maybe that's what both sides have been missing. Perhaps. She moved to leave, then paused. The first human children arrive in 3 weeks. Are you ready? No, but I'll figure it out. How can you be so sure? Daniel smiled. Because 6 weeks ago, I didn't know anything about raising alien princesses either. Sometimes you just have to jump and build your wings on the way down. The Queen made that sound that was the Elthar equivalent of laughter. Humans. So chaotic. So impractical. So trustable. I see Cirrus has been teaching you her made-up words. She's very insistent about them. She gets that from her father. The Queen's expression softened. He would have liked you. He believed in impossible things too. She left them there. 3 unlikely family members watching the universe turn, waiting for tomorrow's impossibilities to begin. The crystal hall of the Elthar Royal Palace stretched impossibly high, its walls catching and refracting light from 3 different suns that orbited the homeworld in complex patterns. Daniel stood at its entrance, 12 human children clustered behind him like ducklings, their eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and terror. It's so bright, whispered Marcus, the oldest at 14, his voice cracking with puberty and nervousness. The Elthar see more of the light spectrum than we do, Daniel explained quietly. To them, this is probably like our normal indoor lighting. It's pretty. Emma, the youngest at 8, declared with the decisive confidence only children possess. Like being inside a rainbow. 3 weeks had passed since the Cross Initiative's announcement, and the first group of human children had arrived yesterday. Daniel had spent sleepless nights preparing, learning everything he could about each child, their fears, their interests, their medical needs. Now, standing in the heart of the Elthar Empire, he felt the full weight of their trust. Papa Daniel! Nera's voice echoed across the vast space as she ran toward them, her formal robes forgotten in her excitement. Behind her, Cirrus walked with more dignity, but Daniel could see her happiness in the way her bioluminescent markings shimmered. The human children tensed as Nera approached. They'd seen images, received preparation, but meeting an alien child in person was different. Nera skidded to a stop just short of them, suddenly shy. Hello, she said in carefully practiced English. I am Nera. I am excited to meet you. Emma stepped forward before Daniel could facilitate. I'm Emma. I like your lights. Can you make them do different things? Nera's entire demeanor brightened. Yes, watch. She created a spiral pattern across her skin, then shifted it into what looked like a butterfly. Cool, several children exclaimed simultaneously. Cyrus reached them more sedately, offering a formal bow that she'd learned was appropriate for human greetings. Welcome to our world. We have prepared many things to show you. Are there really floating cities? Asked Jennifer, a 12-year-old with an engineering bent. Yes. Would you like to see the projection room? We have a full holographic map. As the ice broke and children began tentatively interacting, Daniel felt a presence behind him. The Queen had arrived, flanked by General Varric and Ambassador Kretok. The human children immediately fell silent, intimidated by their regal presence. "Your Majesty," Daniel said, bowing in the Elthar fashion he'd been taught. "Daniel, these are the young humans." "Yes, may I present them?" Each child stepped forward as Daniel called their name, offering awkward bows or curtsies they'd practiced on the transport. The Queen examined each one with those impossibly complex eyes, and Daniel could feel the children's nervousness ratcheting higher. Then, the Queen did something unexpected. She lowered herself to their eye level, her formal robes pooling around her. "You are brave," she said simply. "Braver than many adults. You have come to a world you've been taught to fear, to learn about people you've been told are enemies. This courage honors both our species." "We're not that brave," Marcus admitted. "We're actually pretty scared." "Fear and bravery are not opposites," the Queen replied. "Bravery is acting despite fear. You are here. That is brave." General Varric made a sound of disapproval. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should proceed with the security briefing." "Later, General." The Queen rose smoothly. "First, let the children see what they came to see. Cirrus, Nira, show our guests the youth wing. Daniel, walk with me." As the princesses led the human children away, chattering excitedly about the wonders they would show them, Daniel fell into step beside the Queen. They walked through corridors that seemed to grow from the building itself, organic curves that followed no human architectural logic. "General Varric has concerns," the Queen said without preamble. "He's had concerns since I arrived." "These are new. He believes you're teaching my daughters to be too human. I'm teaching them about humanity. There's a difference. Is there Nira now insists on bedtime stories, a human concept? Cirrus has begun questioning our military policies using human philosophical frameworks." Daniel chose his words carefully. "They're learning to see from multiple perspectives. That's not becoming human. It's becoming wise. Some would call it corruption. Do you—" The Queen paused at a window overlooking the capital city. Spires of living crystal stretched toward the sky, connected by bridges that looked like solidified light. "When I was young, younger than Cirrus, my father took me to the memorial of the First Contact War. Do you know about it? The conflict between the Elthar and the Zafrani, 300 years ago. 312. We won, technically. The Zafrani were forced to abandon 6 systems, but my father showed me the cost. 40 million Elthar dead. Entire bloodlines erased. And for what systems we barely use, pride we could have swallowed." She turned to him. "I swore then that I would find another way. But every path I've tried has led to more conflict. Until now, perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply delaying the inevitable war with humanity." "You don't believe that. How can you be certain?" "Because you let me live. You let me stay with your daughters. You approved this program despite massive opposition. Those aren't the actions of someone who believes war is inevitable." Before the Queen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Not the musical tones of standard alerts, but harsh, discordant warnings that meant immediate danger. "Your Majesty." A guard appeared, his forearms gesturing urgently. "There's been an incident in the youth wing." Daniel ran. He didn't wait for permission, didn't care about protocol. He ran toward where he'd sent 12 human children and 2 alien princesses he'd sworn to protect. The Queen and her guards followed, their longer legs allowing them to keep pace despite his head start. The youth wing was in chaos. Daniel could hear crying, shouting, and underneath it all, a sound that made his blood run cold, the high-pitched whine of a charging weapon. He burst into the main playroom to find a scene from a nightmare. General Varric stood at the center, a military-grade plasma rifle aimed at the huddled group of children. Cirrus had positioned herself in front of the human children, all 4 arms spread protectively. Nira was clinging to Emma, both girls crying. "General," the Queen's voice cracked like a whip. "Explain yourself immediately." "I am preventing a catastrophe," Varric said, not lowering his weapon. These human children are corrupted, infected with a biological weapon designed to kill Elthar young. That's insane, Daniel said, moving slowly toward the children. Is it within minutes of close contact? The Princess Nira began showing symptoms: elevated temperature, respiratory distress, loss of consciousness. Daniel's mind raced. Nira did look flushed, and she was breathing heavily. But biological weapon, she's having an allergic reaction. Emma, what did you give her? Emma held up something in her shaking hand. Chocolate. I brought chocolate to share. She said she wanted to try it after you told her about it. Daniel almost laughed at the absurdity. Theobromine. Chocolate contains theobromine. Elthar are allergic to it. It's not a weapon. It's candy. A convenient excuse, Varric snarled. You knew this would happen. You planned it. General Varric, the Queen said with deadly calm, lower your weapon. I cannot. Not until the threat is neutralized. The only threat here is you pointing a gun at children. Your judgment is compromised. The human has influenced you, just as he's corrupted your daughters. Daniel saw it then. The madness in Varric's 4 eyes. This wasn't about allergies or imagined biological weapons. This was about fear, and hatred so deep it had twisted into paranoia. General, Daniel said carefully, let Dr. Yixel examine Nira. She's the royal physician. She'll confirm it's just an allergic reaction. No more delays. No more human tricks. Varric's finger moved to the trigger. This ends now. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Cirrus stepped forward, directly into the weapon's path. Nira, despite her allergic reaction, pulled away from Emma and stood beside her sister. Then, one by one, the human children stood up and formed a line in front of the princesses. What are you doing? Varric demanded. Protecting our friends, Marcus said, his voice shaking but determined. You would die for aliens. They're not aliens, Emma said with the simple clarity of childhood. They're Cirrus and Nira. Daniel moved to join the children, but stopped when he saw something that took his breath away. Each human child had joined hands with each other and with the princesses, forming an unbreakable chain. Without planning, without coordination, they had chosen to stand together. This is what you fear, General, the Queen said softly. Not weapons or corruption, but connection, understanding. Children choosing love over hate. They're manipulated, controlled. They're brave, Cirrus said, her young voice carrying surprising authority. Braver than you, who points weapons at younglings. You dare? I dare because I am the heir to the Crystal Throne. I dare because these humans have shown more honor in 5 minutes than you have in 50 years. I dare because my mother taught me that courage means standing for what's right, even when standing might cost everything. The room fell silent except for Nira's labored breathing. Daniel could see the war playing out in Varric's eyes. Duty against madness, tradition against fear. General, Daniel said quietly, you've served the Empire with distinction for decades. You've protected the royal family through 3 assassination attempts. Don't let fear make you the thing you fought against. Fear, Varric's voice cracked. You think this is about fear? I know it is. You're afraid these children represent the end of everything you know. And you're right, they do. But endings can also be beginnings. Pretty words from a species that has brought nothing but conflict. Then let us bring something else. Let these children show you what else we can be. Varric's weapon wavered. For a moment, Daniel thought they'd reached him. Then the general's expression hardened. No, the risk is too great. He pulled the trigger. Several things happened simultaneously. Daniel lunged forward, knowing he was too far away. The Queen shouted a command in Elthar that the translator couldn't parse. The children screamed, and the weapon failed to fire. Varric looked at his rifle in confusion, pulling the trigger again. Nothing. Did you really think? The Queen said coldly. That I would allow armed weapons in my children's presence without safeguards. Every weapon in this palace, except those of my personal guard, has been fitted with inhibitors. They cannot fire in the presence of royal biosignatures. Guards flooded the room, surrounding Varric. He didn't resist as they took his weapon, his whole body seeming to deflate. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "I submit myself for judgment." "Yes," the Queen replied, "you do." As the guards led Varric away, Daniel rushed to Nira, who was now wheezing severely. "Medical kit, now!" Dr. Yixel appeared with her team, immediately administering antihistamines designed for Elthar physiology. Within minutes, Nira's breathing eased, though she remained weak. "Will she be okay?" Emma asked, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted to share." "She'll be fine," Daniel assured her. "And you didn't hurt her. You didn't know." "But I should have asked. I should have been more careful." Nira reached out weakly and took Emma's hand. "Not your fault. My fault for not asking if it was safe. We both learning." The Queen surveyed the scene, human and Elthar children still holding hands. Her daughters comforting their new friends. Daniel coordinating with the medical team. Ambassador Kretak, summon the emergency council and contact the human delegation. They need to know what happened here. "Your Majesty," Kretak said carefully, "this incident could end the program. Or strengthen it, we shall see." Over the next hours, the palace became a hub of frantic activity. The human children were examined to ensure they carried no pathogens harmful to Elthar. The Elthar children underwent similar screening. Daniel found himself in meeting after meeting, explaining what had happened, defending the program, trying to prevent one general's breakdown from destroying everything they'd built. The human response came swiftly. Ambassador Hartley appeared on the main communication screen, her face grave. "Your Majesty, we've heard about the incident. Is everyone safe?" "Yes, though not for lack of trying on General Varric's part." "We're prepared to recall the children immediately if you feel the risk is too great." "The only risk," the Queen replied, "came from my own people. The human children acted with extraordinary courage. Nevertheless, if the program has become a flashpoint for violence—" "Ambassador," Daniel interrupted. "With respect, that's exactly why we can't stop. If we end this because of one person's fear, we validate that fear. We tell both our species that connection is too dangerous to attempt. You could have been killed. Those children could have been killed. But we weren't. And look what happened instead. Human children stood to protect Elthar princesses. The princesses stood to protect them. They chose each other over their own safety." Hartley was quiet for a moment. "The parents are terrified." "Let me talk to them," Daniel said. "Let me explain." What followed was the hardest conversation of Daniel's life. 12 sets of parents, some crying, some angry, all afraid. He spoke to each, explaining not just what had happened, but what it meant. "Your son stood between a gun and an alien princess," he told Marcus's mother. "Not because anyone told him to, but because it was right. Your daughter's kindness in sharing chocolate, even though it went wrong, built a bridge of trust," he explained to Emma's fathers. One by one, he convinced them not to be unafraid, but to be brave despite fear. That evening, Daniel found himself in the palace gardens with all 14 children. The 3 suns were setting in sequence, painting the sky in impossible colors. The human children were teaching the princesses human games, while Cirrus and Nira demonstrated Elthar light singing. "Mr. Cross," Jennifer approached him. "Is General Varric going to be executed?" "No. The Elthar don't practice capital punishment. He'll be treated for his condition and retired from service." "He really hated us." "He feared us. Fear and hate often wear the same face." "Were you scared when he pointed the gun?" "Terrified." "But you tried to stop him anyway." "So did you. All of you did." Jennifer considered this. "I guess we're all pretty brave then." The bravest. Marcus joined them, his adolescent awkwardness evident. The Queen wants to see you. All of us, actually. They gathered in the throne room, human children and Elthar princesses together. The Queen stood before her throne rather than sitting, and beside her was a figure Daniel hadn't expected, General Varric, under guard, but present. Today, the Queen began, we witnessed something unprecedented. We saw fear and hatred challenged by courage and compassion. We saw children choose connection over safety. She paused, looking at each child in turn. You have shown us a path we had not imagined. General Varric has something to say. The general stepped forward, his forearms held in a position Daniel recognized as formal submission. I was wrong. My fear blinded me to possibility. These human children. He paused, struggling. They protected my princesses. Even believing they might die, they stood guard. This is not the action of enemies. What are you saying? General Cirrus asked. I am saying that I request assignment to the protection detail for the Cross Initiative. If these bonds between our species are to exist, they must be protected. I would learn to see as these younglings see. The Queen looked at Daniel. The decision is yours. You are the initiative's director. Daniel studied Varric, the general who had nearly killed them all, the soldier whose fear had almost destroyed everything, but also a being capable of admitting error, of changing, of growing. Everyone deserves a second chance, Daniel said, but you'll start at the bottom, learning, not leading. Acceptable. And you'll undergo psychological evaluation and treatment. Already begun. Then welcome to the Cross Initiative, General. As the formal gathering dispersed, Nira tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Papa Daniel, are you really going to let him help? Yes, little star. Even though he scared us. Especially because he scared us. If he can change, anyone can. That's very human thinking, Cirrus observed. Is it? I thought it was just hopeful thinking. Same thing, according to Mother. She says humans hope too much. And what do you think? Cirrus looked at where Emma was teaching Nira a clapping game, their laughter filling the throne room with music. I think hope might be what saves us all. Later that night, Daniel stood on his balcony, looking out over the alien city that had somehow become home. The communication pad in his hand held messages from Earth. Some called him a traitor. Others called him a hero. He wasn't sure he was either. Can't sleep, the Queen's voice came from behind him. Too much to process. You handled Varric well. Another might have demanded harsher punishment. Punishment doesn't change hearts. Connection does. You sound very certain. 2 months ago, I was just a maintenance engineer who'd never left human space. Now I'm standing on the Elthar homeworld, raising alien princesses, and teaching human children to sing with light. If I can change that much, anyone can. The Queen moved to stand beside him. The Council is impressed. Both councils, actually. Human and Elthar leadership are calling today a triumph. It wasn't a triumph. It was a disaster that became a lesson. Perhaps that's what triumph really is. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights dance. Then the Queen spoke again. There's something else. The human government has made a proposal. They want to expand the program. 50 children from each species in the next exchange. That's ambitious. Too ambitious. Daniel thought about the day's events. The fear, the courage, the moment when children chose to stand together against violence. No, we're ready. They're ready. Even with the risks, especially with the risks, that's what makes it real. The Queen made that sound that was almost laughter. You humans, always rushing toward danger. And you, Elthar, always planning for every contingency. Perhaps that's why this works. Balance. A small hand slipped into Daniel's. Nira had appeared, as she often did, silent as shadow. Bad dreams, little star. No, good dreams. About today. Today was scary. Yes, but also good. We were brave together. The queen lifted her daughter, holding her with two arms, while the other two remained regally positioned. You were very brave, my light. Emma was braver. She stood up first. You all stood together. That's what matters. Cyrus appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Family meeting without me. Never, Daniel said, pulling her into a one-armed hug. Just couldn't sleep. Because of General Varric. Because of everything. Mother says you're thinking of accepting 50 human children next time. Yes. Good. 12 isn't enough to play proper team games. Daniel laughed. That's your concern, team games. Team games teach cooperation. Cooperation prevents wars. Therefore, team games are essential to galactic peace. Your logic is flawless. I know. They stood together. An impossible family on an impossible night. Looking out over a city that bridged ground and sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Messages from Earth were already arriving. Some supportive, some hostile. The Elthar military was fracturing between progressives and traditionalists. The children would face more cultural misunderstandings. Some potentially dangerous. But tonight, they were together. Human and Elthar, adult and child, guardian and protected. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the small dramas below. But Daniel knew better. Every small choice, every act of courage or compassion rippled outward. 12 human children and 2 alien princesses had stood against fear today, and won. That was how the future changed. Not in grand gestures or mighty battles, but in the moment when a child chose to share chocolate, when another chose to stand in front of danger, when enemies became friends, one small, brave choice at a time. Papa Daniel, Nira asked sleepily. Yes, little star. Tomorrow, can we teach the humans the welcome dance? I think they'd love that. And maybe they can teach us more Earth games. I'm sure they will. Good. Building bridges is fun. The queen looked at Daniel over her daughter's head. Something unreadable in those complex eyes. She makes it sound so simple. Maybe it is. Maybe we're the ones who make it complicated. Spoken like someone who hasn't sat through a joint military council meeting? Thank God for that. This time, the queen's laughter was full and real. Indeed. Well, I'll leave you to your insomnia. Tomorrow brings the formal review of today's events. Any advice? Be yourself. It's gotten you this far. As she left with Nira, Cyrus remained, leaning against the balcony railing. You're worried about something else. You're too perceptive for your age. It's a survival skill. What worries you? Daniel considered lying, but Cyrus deserved truth. This is just the beginning. Today proved that. There will be more Varics, on both sides. People who see connection as threat, understanding as weakness. And I'm just one person. I can't protect everyone from that kind of fear. Cyrus was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You don't have to. You just have to teach us to protect each other. That's what happened today. Not you protecting us, but all of us protecting each other. When did you become so wise? When you showed me it was okay to be both strong and kind. She hugged him then, quick and fierce, before disappearing back into the palace. Daniel remained on the balcony, watching alien constellations wheel overhead. Tomorrow would come with all its challenges and complexities. But tonight had proven something important. Connection was stronger than fear. Understanding could overcome hatred. And sometimes, the bravest thing in the universe was a child choosing to share chocolate with a new friend. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since this all began, Daniel Cross truly believed it might also be bright. 3 months had passed since the Varic incident, and the Cross Initiative had grown beyond anyone's imagination. The exchange program now included 50 children from each species, with satellite programs starting on 6 different worlds. Daniel stood in the newly constructed Cultural Center on Celestara Station, watching human and Elthar children work together on a joint art project that somehow incorporated both Earth watercolors and Elthar light weaving. Mr. Cross. A young voice interrupted his observations. It was Jennifer, one of his original 12, now serving as a mentor to newer arrivals. The Queen's shuttle has arrived. She's requesting your presence in the formal reception hall. Daniel nodded, though something felt off. The Queen hadn't mentioned visiting today, and she always gave advance notice. As he walked through the station's corridors, he noticed an unusual amount of security, both human and Elthar forces positioned at strategic points. The reception hall was packed, not just with diplomats and officials, but with media from across the galaxy. Ambassador Hartley stood on the human side, her expression unreadable. General Varric, now reformed and serving as a protector of the program, stood at attention near the Elthar delegation. And at the center, Queen Zaratai waited with Cirrus and Nira at her sides. Daniel Cross, the Queen said formally, her voice carrying across the silent hall. Approach. Daniel walked forward, his mind racing. This felt like a ceremony. But for what had something gone wrong? Were they shutting down the program? When he reached the Queen, she gestured for him to stop. 3 months ago, you stood before me in a very different circumstance. My daughters had been missing for 60 days. They were dying. You had saved them at great personal cost. Your Majesty. Please, let me finish. She turned to address the entire assembly. What most of you don't know is that my daughters were not lost by accident. They were not forgotten in the chaos of conflict. Daniel's blood ran cold. What are you saying? Cirrus, Nira, please show everyone the recordings you made. Cyrus stepped forward, producing a small device Daniel had never seen before. With a touch, it projected holographic images into the air. They were rough, clearly recorded by children, but the content was unmistakable. It showed Daniel in the medical bay at Orialis Station, building the translation bracelets. It showed him standing between the princesses and Admiral Patterson. It showed him working through the night to synthesize Vrexmar. These recordings, the Queen continued, were transmitted to me through emergency quantum channels that I established with my daughters before they visited the research station. Channels that remained active even after the attack. You mean... Daniel's voice failed him. I knew where they were the entire time. I knew they were dying, and I knew when you saved them. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Ambassador Hartley stepped forward. Your Majesty, are you saying you deliberately left your children in danger? I'm saying I made the hardest decision of my life. The Queen's voice carried pain that transcended species. Our peoples were racing toward war. Every diplomatic channel had failed. We needed something unprecedented, something that couldn't be manufactured or scripted. We needed genuine human compassion toward Elthar children, documented and undeniable. You used your own daughters as bait. Daniel couldn't hide his horror. No, Cirrus spoke up, her young voice firm. We volunteered. What? Nira nodded. Mother told us the plan before we left. If something went wrong at the station, if we were separated, we were to wait and observe, to see if any human would help us without knowing who we were. But you were dying, Daniel protested. The Vrexmar deficiency was real, the Queen confirmed. I didn't anticipate that complication. My daughters nearly paid the ultimate price for my gambit. But even facing death, they maintained their mission. They recorded everything, every kindness you showed, every sacrifice you made, every moment that proved humans were capable of loving our children as their own. Daniel felt his legs threaten to give out. Everything he'd believed about those desperate weeks was shifting. They knew the whole time. They knew. We knew you were good, Cirrus said softly. We didn't know you would become Papa Daniel. That part wasn't planned. The recordings were transmitted in real time. The Queen continued. I watched you run through those corridors carrying my daughters. I watched you face down your own people. I watched you choose them over everything else. And I knew I had found what I was looking for. A propaganda tool. Daniel's voice was bitter. A bridge. The Queen moved closer to him. Do you know how many of my advisors told me to attack when those first recordings arrived? How many demanded immediate military response? But I showed them what happened next. A human maintenance engineer. Nobody special by your society's standards. Refusing to abandon alien children. Teaching them Earth stories. Building them toys. Standing against his own military to protect them. You manipulated everything. I created an opportunity. You created everything else. The Queen gestured to the room full of children. This program exists because of what you chose to do. These children are safe because you showed both our species a different path. General Varick stepped forward. I was not privy to this information. My reaction, my fear, my attack on the children, that was real. The Queen allowed me to become the villain to test how far humanity's compassion extended. No, the Queen corrected. Your breakdown was unexpected. General. But the response to it, human children protecting Elthar royalty, that proved more than any planned scenario could have. Daniel looked at Cirrus and Nira, searching their faces. Every moment, every conversation, was any of it real? Tears were streaming down Nira's face. It was all real. We were scared and hungry and dying. You saved us. You loved us when you didn't have to. The mission was to observe and record, Cirrus added, her own eyes glistening. But everything else, the stories, the games, the family we became, none of that was planned. We love you, Papa Daniel. That was never part of any strategy. Ambassador Hartley cleared her throat. Your Majesty, while this revelation is significant, what exactly is the purpose of sharing it now? Because secrets corrode trust, the Queen replied. And because Daniel Cross deserves to know the full truth of his impact. His actions, broadcast across the Elthar Empire, turned public opinion from war to curiosity. Citizens who had never seen humans as anything but enemies watched him sing lullabies to my daughters. Military hardliners saw him stand unarmed against weapons to protect alien children. He became the proof that peace was possible. And on our side, Hartley asked. The same. The footage of Elthar princesses calling a human papa, of them standing to protect human children from their own general. It changed hearts. The Cross Initiative has prevented a war that would have killed billions. Daniel stood in the center of it all, trying to process the revelation. He'd been a pawn, but also a catalyst. Manipulated, but also genuine. Used, but also loved. There's more, the Queen said. I've called this gathering to make an announcement. The Elthar Empire is offering humanity something unprecedented. Full technological exchange. Medical advances that could extend human life by centuries. Energy systems that could transform your worlds. All of it. Gasps echoed through the hall. This was beyond anything negotiated before. In exchange, Hartley asked carefully. No exchange. A gift. From one species to another. Because Daniel Cross taught us that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is give without expecting return. The High Council will never approve this, someone from the human delegation said. They already have, Hartley revealed. We've been in emergency session for the past 6 hours. The vote was unanimous. Daniel finally found his voice. Why tell me now? Why reveal the deception? Because you deserve the truth. And because I need to ask you something. The Queen moved directly in front of him. My daughter's feeling for you is real. Their need for a guardian who understands both worlds is real. Will you continue as their Keth Marie, knowing everything? Daniel looked at Cirrus and Nira. He thought about the betrayal, the manipulation, the games played with all their lives. Then he thought about Nira's nightmares, soothed by his presence. Cirrus's joy when she mastered a difficult Earth language phrase. The trust in their eyes when they called him Papa Daniel. "I need to ask them something first," he said. He knelt down to their level. "Did you ever want to tell me?" "Every day," Cirrus whispered. "But Mother said—" "I know what she said. That's not what I'm asking. Did you want to tell me?" "Yes," both princesses said together. "Why didn't you—" "Because," Nira said in a small voice, "we were afraid you'd stop loving us if you knew we'd been lying." Daniel's heart broke a little. He pulled both girls into a hug, feeling them shake with relief. "Listen to me, both of you. Love isn't something that breaks that easily. You were children in an impossible situation. You did what you had to do. And every moment we've shared since, that's been real. That's been us." He stood, still holding their hands, and faced the Queen. "Yes, I'll continue as their guardian, not because of politics or prevention of war, but because they're my daughters now. Biology and species be damned." The Queen's composure finally cracked, and she smiled. Really smiled. "I had hoped, but I wasn't certain. That I'd forgive the manipulation. I haven't. Not entirely. But these two didn't choose to be pawns any more than I did. They need stability, love, and someone who sees them as children first, princesses second, and symbols never." "Papa Daniel," Nira tugged on his sleeve. "Does this mean you're not mad?" "I'm upset about the lies, but I'm not mad at you." "Are you mad at Mother?" Daniel met the Queen's eyes. "Your mother did what she thought was necessary to save both our species. I can't fault her for that, even if I don't like her methods." "How wonderfully human," the Queen observed. "Forgiveness despite betrayal." "How wonderfully Elthar," Daniel countered. "Elaborate schemes that somehow work out." General Varric coughed. "If I may interrupt this touching moment, there are security concerns to address. If this information becomes public—" "It's going public now," the Queen announced. "Full transparency. Both species will know how the Cross Initiative truly began." "That's risky," Hartley warned. "Some will see it as validation that the Elthar can't be trusted. And others will see it as proof that, even in deception, truth emerges. That a mother's desperate gamble and a maintenance engineer's compassion prevented a war. There will be those who call for Daniel's arrest," Hartley continued, "collaborating with enemy intelligence, even unknowingly. Anyone who tries to arrest him will face the full might of the Elthar fleet," the Queen said flatly. "He is family. We protect family." "And the human children in the program?" someone asked. "Their parents will panic." Jennifer stepped forward from the crowd of children. "No, they won't." All eyes turned to her. "Because we'll tell them the truth. All of us. The first 50. We'll tell them what we've seen. Elthar children sharing their food when ours ran out. Princess Cirrus teaching us their mathematics when we struggled. Princess Nira crying when Marcus fell and broke his arm. We'll tell them that, manipulation or not, the friendship is real." Other children began speaking up, both human and Elthar, sharing stories of connection and friendship that no political scheme could have manufactured. Daniel watched with pride as they took control of the narrative, refusing to let adult fears destroy what they'd built. "You see," the Queen said to the assembled dignitaries, "they are already wiser than us. They see past the deception to the truth beneath." "What truth is that?" asked a journalist who'd somehow gotten close enough to be heard. It was Cirrus who answered. "That we were all strangers who became family. That fear made us enemies. But love can make us allies. That Papa Daniel was right when he said sometimes, you have to jump and build your wings on the way down." "That's not quite how I said it," Daniel murmured. "I improved it," Cirrus replied with dignity. The formal gathering began to break up, but the conversations continued. Diplomats huddled in corners. Media rushed to file reports. And children simply went back to their art project as if universe-changing revelations were everyday occurrences. Daniel, found himself on an observation deck with the Queen and his daughters. Earth and Elthar Prime were both visible from here, distant points of light that had seemed so far apart just months ago. "You knew I'd save them," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. "I hoped, based on psychological profiles, behavioral analysis, probability matrices, but I didn't know. That's what made it real. And if I hadn't, then my daughters would have died, and war would have consumed us all." The Queen's voice was steady, but Daniel heard the weight in it. "I wagered everything on human compassion, on your compassion." "That's a hell of a gamble." "Yes, but look what we won." She gestured to where Cirrus was teaching Nira a new light pattern, both girls laughing. "Not just peace, but possibility. Your species and mine, learning from each other, growing together. It could still fail. There are still those on both sides who want conflict. There always will be. But now we have something stronger than fear. We have proof that connection is possible. We have a generation of children who see each other as friends. We have you. I'm just one person. You were just a maintenance engineer. Now you're the human who loved alien princesses enough to sacrifice everything. You're the father my daughters chose. You're the bridge between worlds." Daniel watched his daughters play, their laughter mixing human and Elthar joy into something entirely new. "I never wanted to be a symbol." "Neither did I. But sometimes the universe chooses for us." Nira ran over and grabbed his hand. "Papa Daniel Cirrus figured out how to make Earth animals with light patterns. Look." She demonstrated, her bioluminescent spots forming a rough approximation of a dog. It was clumsy, but recognizable, and utterly charming. "That's amazing, little star. I'm going to teach all the human children and they can teach us their drawings. We'll make a whole book of Earth Elthar art." As she ran back to her sister, the Queen observed, "She has no idea she's creating the foundation for cultural synthesis that will define the next century. To her, she's just sharing with friends. Perhaps that's all cultural synthesis really is, sharing between friends." A communication alert chimed, and the Queen checked her device. "The High Councils are calling for a formal treaty ceremony. They want to make the alliance official. With me as some sort of ceremonial figurehead. With you as what you are, a father, a teacher, a reminder that individual choices can reshape civilizations." Daniel sighed. "When?" "Tomorrow. Can you handle that?" He looked at his daughters, now surrounded by both human and Elthar children, all working together on their art project. Tomorrow they'd stand before the powers of two civilizations. They'd be symbols, and bridges, and hopes for the future. But tonight, they were just children playing together. "I can handle anything as long as they're with me." They always will be. That's what family means. The next day, the treaty ceremony drew representatives from dozens of worlds. The document itself was a masterpiece of diplomacy, establishing not just peace, but active cooperation in science, culture, and exploration. But the moment that history would remember came when Daniel stood to sign as witness. "I'm not a diplomat," he said to the assembled crowd. "I'm not a politician or a soldier or anyone important. 6 months ago, I was fixing radiation leaks and counting down days on a contract. But I learned something in those months. I learned that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and acting anyway. It's about seeing someone who needs help and helping them, regardless of species or politics or personal cost." He looked at Cirrus and Nira, standing with their mother. "These two taught me that family isn't about blood or even species. It's about choice, about choosing to love, choosing to protect, choosing to believe in each other even when the whole universe says you shouldn't." Then he turned to the human delegation. "We've spent so long seeing the Elthar as enemies that we forgot to see them as people. Parents who love their children, children who have nightmares, beings who laugh and cry and hope just like us. And finally, to the Elthar delegation. And you've seen humans as aggressive and chaotic, unable to see that our chaos comes from passion, our aggression from fear of losing what we love. We're not so different. We all want our children to grow up safe. We all want to explore the stars. We all want to belong. He signed the treaty with hands that barely shook, then stepped back. I don't know if this peace will last, but I know that right now, in this moment, human and Elthar children are playing together. They're learning each other's languages, sharing each other's food, becoming friends. And maybe, if we don't mess it up, they'll grow up in a universe where being different isn't a threat, but an opportunity. The applause was thunderous, but Daniel barely heard it. Cirrus and Nira had broken from their formal positions and ran to him, nearly knocking him over with their enthusiasm. That was perfect, Nira exclaimed. You didn't mention the translation bracelets, Cirrus noted. Those were important too. There's a lot I didn't mention. We'd be here all day. Papa Daniel, Nira looked up at him with those prismatic eyes. Are you happy? He thought about it. 6 months ago. He'd been alone, purposeless, existing rather than living. Now he stood at the center of galactic history, responsible for dozens of children, symbol of peace between species. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. Yes, little star, I'm happy. Good, Cirrus said with satisfaction. Because we have a surprise. The two princesses led him to a section of the station he hadn't seen before. The door opened to reveal a workshop, perfectly equipped with tools both human and Elthar. What is this? Your new laboratory, the Queen said, appearing behind them. The Cross Initiative needs more than just cultural exchange. It needs innovation, new technologies that blend our sciences. You've already proven adept at adaptation with the translation bracelets and Rexmar synthesis. But I'm not a scientist, I'm just a maintenance engineer who saved 2 civilizations, the Queen interrupted. Stop underestimating yourself. The workshop was perfect. Everything he could need to experiment, to create, to build bridges not just between cultures, but between technologies. And the best part, Nira said, bouncing with excitement, is that all the children can help. We'll make things together. Daniel could see it. Human and Elthar children learning science through cooperation, creating innovations neither species could achieve alone. It was ambitious, probably impossible, definitely dangerous. It was perfect. Thank you, he said to the Queen. Thank you, she replied, for saving my daughters, for preventing a war, for showing us a better way. I just did what anyone would. No, the Queen interrupted. You did what only you could have done. You chose love over law, compassion over protocol, connection over safety. You jumped without wings and learned to fly. As the months turned to years, the Cross Initiative grew into something neither species had imagined. The workshop became a hub of innovation, producing technologies that seemed like magic, medical devices that could heal across species lines, communication systems that translated not just words, but emotions, ships that could travel farther and faster by combining human intuition with Elthar precision. But more importantly, it produced understanding, children who grew up together, learned together, created together, a generation that saw diversity as strength, difference as opportunity, connection as natural. Daniel aged, as humans do, faster than Elthar. His hair grew gray, lines mapped years of laughter and worry across his face. But his spirit remained bright, especially when surrounded by his ever-growing family of students. On the 5th anniversary of the treaty, Cirrus and Nira, now teenagers by their species standards, stood before the assembled governments to present their first joint innovation, a device that could terraform dead worlds by combining Earth's biological adaptability with Elthar energy manipulation. This is just the beginning, Cirrus announced with the confidence of her royal heritage. Our generation doesn't see human and Elthar. We just see us, together. We'll explore galaxies our parents never dreamed of. We'll solve problems they thought impossible. We'll build a future where war between our species is not just unlikely, but unthinkable. And we'll do it, Nira added with a grin. Because Papa Daniel taught us that family isn't about where you come from, but where you choose to go together. The crowd erupted in celebration, but Daniel barely noticed. He was watching his daughters, these remarkable beings who'd entered his life through deception, but stayed through love. They caught his eye and smiled, and in that moment, he saw not the fate of civilizations or the weight of history. He saw his little stars, shining bright, lighting the way to a future built on the simplest and most powerful force in the universe, the choice to love without limits. The story that began with a maintenance engineer and a radiation leak, with two scared children in the dark, had become legend. But for Daniel Cross, sitting in his workshop surrounded by human and Elthar children, building impossible things together, it was just Tuesday. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. Peace had become ordinary. Love had become expected. The impossible had become everyday. The stars continued their dance, but now humanity and the Elthar danced together, step by uncertain step, toward a future written not in fear, but in hope. And in a workshop on Celestera Station, an old engineer and two alien princesses continued to build bridges. One invention, one friendship, one choice at a time.